What am I to do but tear away when I'm boiling at the top? Try to find a way to fight the fire, smart to rap from the minds of liars. Call the shots as you bow your heads, and the march never stops. The stars could be free, but this insanity bends you right by the knee. Running in circles now for something that can't be found. And I bet as you hit the wall, the rain starts to fall. You can run away, sing a tune that's true. I'll be beside you. To decay from tears of blood, regrets of laughter. Turn around as your heart beat faster. Your hollow shape as the faith begins to drop.
Fire up the old mics and say, welcome to Modern Day Debate, everybody. Tonight we're going to be debating evolution on trial. And to get us started, we have William Engineer. So William, you have up to 12 minutes, we've decided in advance, and the floor is all yours.
Thank you. Let me get my screen sharing.
You are up and ready. There we go. We're looking at, yeah, it's a presentation. All right, I'll start the timer right now.
All right. Thank you, everybody. My name is Will, and I'm here to defend evolution, and I want to explain why it is a theory and a fact. So let's go ahead and get started. So first of all, I first want to establish, first and foremost, that almost all creationists believe in evolution, and I believe my collocator does as well. They believe evolution is real because there's some instances that are so undeniable that they have to admit it. And here's a couple of good examples. In medicine, evolution is used to ensure medicine works correctly. The flu virus evolves every year. And if we didn't understand that viruses evolve over time, we would be unable to make effective flu vaccines to compensate for those evolutions. So the fact that vaccines work over time, that's the chart you see on the screen, is the reduction in deaths from the flu virus. The fact that it works over time is proof that not only do we observe it, we use it in developing medicines. We also use it in agriculture. Kale, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, and cauliflower are all evolutionary cousins to the wild mustard plant. This is another use of evolution in everyday life. 95% of all of the food you consume on a daily basis are products of evolution that humans have taken advantage of to make foods better, more accessible over time. So not only do we know evolution is true, we actually utilize it in industry to make money in certain cases, especially in medicine and in agriculture. So we know evolution is true. So debate over. No. Creationists like to put evolution in different categories to try to compensate for the ones that are so obvious that they can never deny it, to ones that are a little bit more further away, so they try to deny others. So they usually distinguish it in micro versus macroevolution. Microevolution being evolution within a kind or a species. They believe in that, but they don't believe in macroevolution, which is the evolution between different species. They think that is not true. So how can we establish that evolution does occur between species? Do we observe that happening, and can we have direct observations for it? The answer is yes. We do have direct observations for evolution happening between species. I have 4 examples on the screen here. In 1999, there was a new species of cricket that couldn't chirp, that made it more safe around predators. In 1850s, there was a new species of fly that would exclusively eat apples due to the introduction of apples into North America. In 1978, there was a new finch species that had a different shaped beak because it was accounting for a drought that was occurring on the Galapagos at the time. And then in 1998, there was a new species of mosquito that was appeared in the underground metro of London that exclusively lived in the metro. In all 4 of these examples, the new species that evolved became reproductively isolated. They could no longer reproduce with the previous ancestors of that animal. So these are absolutely clear examples of macroevolution that we have actually observed in real life. So these are direct observations. So boom, case closed. We now know macroevolution is true too. So debate's over again. But for some reason, I don't think creationists are going to buy it. I don't think they're going to accept that this is macroevolution. I think they're going to argue this is actually within the same species. So although the scientists and biologists and zoologists who disagree, they say, no, this is a different species, creationists are going to look at it and say, nah, not different enough. You need it to be more different. Fine, fair enough. I think what creationists really want is a much more dramatic looking evolution. They want something that looks far different from the previous animal. And if we understand how evolution works on every level, whether it be micro or macro, you have to understand that it takes time. And the more time, the more evolution that will occur. So if you want an extremely dramatic, extreme version of evolution, you need an extremely dramatic amount of time for that evolution to occur. So all of these evolutions I've listed only took a few decades to a few hundred years. But what if we gave it a few 100,000 years or a few million years? Then we're going to actually see changes that you would never associate them with the original species. So, but that's going to take, again, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years. And humans don't live that long. Recorded history has existed for 10,000 years. So we have never observed that directly. So how could we establish that it is true? The answer is through indirect observations. We have plenty of indirect evidences and observations that do prove much more extreme versions of evolutions do occur. So let's go over those evidences. Number 1 is through the fossil record. The fossil record has proven many different animals have gone through very dramatic evolutions, and I chose 3 examples just to show. Number 1 is the whale. We have established through the fossil record that whales not only did evolve over time from other species, it actually became a land mammal after it became a land mammal, it then went back into the ocean later. That is why whales and dolphins are mammals that breathe air. And that is seen through that fossil record. Same with horses. Horses originally had more digits on their feet, and the original animal was closer to a capybara rather than a horse. And you would not have associated these two to be in relation to each other. But over about 50 million years, the digits on its fingers, on its hands, grew smaller, and one digit grew larger and larger until their whole arm was essentially one digit, which allowed them to gallop a lot faster to avoid animals and survive longer. And of course, humans evolved, and we have the evidence for that as well through the fossil record. And I really want to establish that the missing link, that fossil that's somewhere that will finally establish that humans are connected to primates, that missing link fossil is a myth. because we have all the missing links. We have as many missing links, as many of the links as you would expect to have, assuming evolution is true. We have those links. They have been established. And they're not hidden either. They're on display in museums and in universities, where they will encourage people to come look at them and investigate them and critique them as much as physically possible. We want people to know that these are here. They're not missing and they're not secret. They are on display just as evolution would expect them to be. My second point of evidence is DNA, right? Humans share 98% of their DNA with primates. And creationists will look at this and say, well, the 2%, they're 2% different, so they're not related, right? That 2% is enough to say they're not related at all. And I would say, well, if you understand how a paternity test works, and you believe paternity tests work, right? You can believe that if you take a DNA sample from a child and a parent, and you compare them, and you can see enough similarity that you establish that, yes, that is the parent of this child. Same with sisters and brothers, you can establish there's a relation because the DNA is so similar. They're not identical, but they're so similar that you can establish relations. If you believe in those tests and don't believe in that DNA can establish relations between different species, then that's a contradiction in logic. You believe in one, but not the other, even though it's the exact same process. It is even true in the 23andMe tests that use your DNA to establish your relation to other humans across the world. You understand your relation because you have similar DNA, not identical DNA, similar. And the more similar it is, the more closer you are related to that person. It's the same it's true within humans, and it's also true between species. It's the exact same process. If you believe it for 23andMe and paternity tests, then you have to also believe it for interspecies DNA. Number 5, scientific consensus supporting microevolution. Almost 100% of scientists support macroevolution and believe it is true. 98% of them. Now the question is this a fallacious argument I'm giving you? Oh, all these people believe it, therefore you should believe it? No, it is not fallacious, because it is important to note that the appeal to authority fallacy should not be used to dismiss the claims of experts or scientific consensus. Appeals to authority are not valid arguments, but nor is it reasonable to disregard the claims of experts who have a demonstrated depth of knowledge unless one has a similar level of understanding and or access to empirical evidence. So no, pointing to the fact that almost all scientists agree with macroevolution is not fallacious. It is a very valid point that favors macroevolution's validity and is not and is very important to understand and know how true it really is. Number 6, macroevolution's compatibility with faith. Can you be a Christian and also believe in evolution? Well, the answer is yes. According to the Pope does agree that evolution and Christianity are fine if you want to have them both at the same. If you believe in evolution, you can also believe in Christianity. You don't have to think it's a contradiction with each other. Francis Collins also agrees with the Pope in saying you can believe in both evolution and Christianity. There's no problem there. And let's talk about the Bible itself.
2 minutes left.
2 minutes. Thank you. Let's talk about the Bible itself. In the beginning, in the creation, it establishes that God created the world in 7, say it with me, yom, right? In 7 yom. God created the world in 7 yom. And people have translated that word to mean days, 7 days. But that translation is up for debate, right? It's not black or white. Some people think that word was closer to meaning a long but finite span of time, which could mean any amount of time, could mean millions, billions of years, which if you consider that in contrast with all the other evidence with evolution, you can easily understand how that evolution does not necessarily contradict Christianity. You do not have to be an atheist to understand that evolution is a fact, is my point. They do not necessarily contradict each other. And this is my last slide. It's just trying to establish why evolution is important in the first place. My first point is that it's observable. It has been directly observed. In addition to all of the many indirect measurements, it's also been directly observed. It's not some theoretical idea that some people have. It's not a hypothesis. It is as concrete as the theory of gravity or the theory of atomic theory. It also unifies almost every other realm of science, from biology to physics to paleontology, all the sciences you can see here, it unifies all of them and drives innovation in all of them. If evolution was not true, there would be far more breakdowns in every single one of these fields of science. And lastly, my point is that evolution does not degrade our appreciation of nature. Knowing you are related to every other animal in existence is not a degradation of your understanding. It is an enhancer. It makes you far more appreciative of the beauty of all of these creatures and the beauty of life itself. And I will end my time with that.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your introductory statement there, William. We appreciate you being here on Modern Day Debate. And if you're having fun in the live chat, we'd appreciate it if you'd hit the like button and share this out in the spaces you like having these debates. We really appreciate it. Let's try to boost it up in the algorithm. We are a neutral debate space, hosting debates on science, politics, religion, and hopefully everybody feels welcome here. With that introduction, we will have 12 minutes on the floor for Evidence of God. So once again, thank you so much for being here, Evidence of God. We appreciate you, and the floor is yours.
All right, thank you. Thanks for being here. Thanks for having me. Today I'm going to be arguing, like my opponent claimed, that a lot of creationists do believe in evolution and the probability of it given the evidences. My position today is that the Bible is what supports the observable evidence regarding evolutionary changes rather than Darwinian evolution and the ideas associated with that. So many creationists steer away from the idea of evolution theory as if it disproves the Bible. I believe the evidence from evolutionary theory supports a biblical creator. The sciences show intent, purpose, complexity, order, design, and the Bible fills in the blanks and answers the questions Darwin's theory lacks. Evolution has long been used to discredit the Bible's account as opposing or rendering God unnecessary. Every discovery since the 1900s has been an attempt to fit Darwin's theory of random shapeshifting into a incoherent package the world can say solved without a creator. Science is about observations to test and repeat, none of which evolutionary theory can account for. If intelligent design was kept as a possible theory in the running, the observations we make surrounding the sciences, especially evolution, would make much more sense given the evidences. Instead, sciences are stuck saying non-random, random chance. That is an obvious oxymoron, and yet it's an acceptable explanation only when referring to Darwinian evolution theory. Genetic coding that allows for adaptations to environments don't appear to be random happenstance. Instead, they appear very specific with intention coded into the genetics. Like Darwin's finches, in whom single generations can adapt beak sizes and shapes to suit its environment, the only examples of such intelligence we have is in the engineering sciences. Our DNA codes for our traits. So when we consider how similar our body is to apes, it shouldn't be surprising that we share such similarities in our DNA. The mere fact that we observe this is the great supporting evidence for an engineer's intervention. As that works and kept in future models rather than discarded. We observe this in evolutionary theory, and again, it supports the observable evidence of design with intent. If our existence was mere chance and happenstance, as Darwinian evolution teaches, the diversity we observe isn't nearly enough to support the theory. Our DNA should be an unorganized mess to the degree that there's no way to read it, map it, manipulate it. Yet it's the complete opposite. The more we study DNA, the more we are able to manipulate, read this organized code. Humans alone should have major differences. We should have undeniable traits that show us from our random origins, from an ancient common aquatic ancestors, among others. Multiple arms, different lengths, single eyes, major variations in our skin capabilities and other attributes, as well as chromosome counts. The list is unending of the possibilities that should appear in a random happenstance of shapeshifting if we all originated randomly from a single cell. Given the way our DNA codes for our traits, mutations, and observations of changes among species affected by factors of nature, we should potentially see interspecies breeding in nature, and our genetic codes all originate from one source. This is constantly mutating and manipulating itself for the purpose of bringing forth diverse life. There are a few of these traits that should be predicted as plausible by honest proponents of Darwinian evolution theory. Endless possibilities of situations we deem abnormal given observable nature and reality. Instead, we see organization and order in every creature on Earth, interbreeding possible only among certain kinds, like my opponent pointed out in his opening. Showing a common ancestor to that specific kind, and this proves nothing more. Constant random mutations are happening in every organism's population on Earth. The only one kind, and we're the only one kind that came out on top today, despite the immense diversity that would have been in existence in accordance with Darwinian theory. It's a dramatic stretch of the imagination to consider this as the plausible explanation rather than an intelligent designer. We should be finding creatures and fossils with very strange traits, like octopus arms mixed with other types of arms, among so many other possible combinations of our genetics that is supposedly once coded for these other attributes. Again, the possibilities should be endless of strange combinations Darwinian evolutionary theory should predict and we would find. Instead, what we observe is in line with the engineering, order, structure, and productivity to its species. Darwinian evolution doesn't make predictions, it merely claims what it finds. It shoots the arrow, draws the target, and claims it as a prediction. If the goalposts constantly are moved to ensure that it never misses. What we observe in the natural world can only be attributed to the designer, given the evidence. We have no examples of random chance creating anything, so we don't know what this should look like beyond speculation that is discredited due to not observing these traits in nature. So why are we still attributing order, structure, and complex organizations that we observe in nature to a ridiculous, unobservable idea like random chance evolution? If Darwinian evolution can make claims based on the observable world and call it predictions, we should be able to do the same thing with intelligent design. Genesis, the waters bring forth the moving creatures that have life. If abiogenesis is the only plausible conclusion to the origins of life, given what we understand about the environmental factors and the implications, the biggest lingering question left is how did it start on its own? God created every living creature that moves, which the waters brought forth abundantly after their kind. Moses is alluding to the idea that water spawned all life on earth, which is the acceptable scientific model for the only plausible explanation for life's origins. So how did the water spawn the land creatures? God said, let the waters bring forth the moving creatures that hath life, and the fowl that may fly above the earth in the open sky. The Bible's claiming some sort of speciation shift from water to sky. We can observe this in nature. Penguins, a creature in between a bird and an ocean creature. Flying fish, swimming and gliding in the air. Many birds are comfortable in the water. They hunt, dive, swim, and crows even fish. The anatomy of a bird has similarities to the fish. Fish have aerodynamic fins to swim. Birds have aerodynamic fins to fly. As we observe this in many species that takes on each other's roles as they cross the line into other atmospheres. Dinosaurs are said to have turned into birds after a global catastrophic event. Did they turn to birds, or did the birds become the land creatures, like the Bible alludes to? God blessed them, saying, be fruitful and multiply, fill the waters and the seas, and let the fowl multiply in the earth. Many dinosaurs have these ridiculous arms that appear to be out of place as reptiles, but if they were birds, this makes much more sense when trying to rationalize these limbs that appear on so many. We observe these same arms in birds like chickens. Rather than the obvious conclusion that these arms are part of wings, they claim these arms evolved to prevent them from being bitten off during battle. Evolutionists are constantly making the claims regarding why things changed, as if evolution theory has some mind behind it, calling the shots. Yet it's a random chance driven by the nature to create offspring. Feathers are difficult to fossilize due to their components. However, in recent years, feathers are being put on dinosaur fossils due to new discoveries. Dinosaurs used to be connected to birds due to their anatomy, then feathers were discovered on them. Evolutionists claim this is the evidence that dinosaurs turned into birds. However, it's merely evidence that they were birds. Like Darwinian finches, the beaks are able to make dramatic changes in single generations. In a study from the University of Chicago, a team was able to alter the clustering of certain proteins to change the formation of a beak into a snout, showing how simply and rapidly changes like these can occur, yet they don't occur in nature this way. Rather than some rigorous random chance process over hundreds of millions of years, this trait is already coded in their DNA. Bats are similar situations. Creatures like rays show a tissue-based wingspan rather than invoking a rat grew wings and took flight randomly. The point of this is to display that evolution theory is not a random chance happenstance that disproves God. Rather, evolution theory is observed in the science. Rather, the evolution theory as observed in the sciences supports an intelligence and is in line with biblical descriptions. Rather than invoking the idea of extinctions and continual repeated and organized evolution, all driven by random, non-intelligent, non-desired desire to create offspring. Rather than claiming a cell showed up, crawled out of the ocean, took to the sky, went extinct, continually repeated these cycles with similar anatomies, going back and forth from land, ocean, and skies, randomly appearing with organization, complexity into productive species, categorized by what ancestors they belong to when God completed his creation. In the same time frame, God created the oceans and God created ocean creatures and fowls. He separated the land from the sea and the air creatures. With time, this continued to the next day. God blessed them and
2 minutes.
said, be fruitful. 2 minutes. God blessed them and said, be fruitful and multiply, fill the waters and the seas, and the fowl multiply in the earth. So if the Bible is true and evolution theory is fit in, then the same with humans can be said, that I don't believe humans evolved from apes, and I don't think the evidence supports this. I do believe the Bible, that Adam and Eve were created, and hopefully we can maybe jump into some of that. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much to both of our speakers for your introductory statements. We appreciate you guys both being here to have this conversation. And I'm just going to remind our live chat that all of these debates are uploaded to podcast form within 24 hours. So if you get a tune out at any point, you can always catch it later on the audio, or if it's too much data for you wherever you are, I don't know. Some people don't have unlimited data. You can tune into the podcast and just get the audio. And that with that being said, both of our speakers are also going to be tagged in the description both here and there. If you want to ask a question to our speakers, though, you got to subscribe to the YouTube live channel so that you can be here when it's going down, and we will do our Q&A at the end of our conversation. So I'm going to hand it over to you, William, to respond to some of what you just heard, and let's go into an open discussion there, fellas.
Awesome. I appreciate that, and I appreciate your presentation, EOG. So you keep, I think it's a little bit blurry still on exactly what aspect of evolution you don't think is real, because you're saying you believe in evolution, but then you say you don't believe in other evolution. Could you try to clarify that a little bit more?
Yeah, no, of course. So I think there was a little miscommunication with the debate, but so I believe that the Bible describes evolution in the sense that I read out. So like evolutionary theory teaches that creatures came to land, they went to water, they went extinct, they went back and forth. I think the Bible lays out the most plausible explanation, which is that they went from the water, like a biogenesis created, they went to the sky, then to the land. And I think all land creatures can be traced back to that origin. That's my position on that. I know you somewhat agree with me. Like I said, there was some miscommunication as far as the evolution. But with humans, so I believe in the Bible, so it's the same with humans. So I don't think the evidence supports human evolution whatsoever. I think that it's far stretches of the imagination to claim that all these different humans or homos live together, bred together. Nothing's left. I think the evidence traces humanity back, as well as many other traits throughout the evolutionary evidence that shows that humans did not evolve, rather were placed here. So that's my position on it. So maybe we can jump into some of that. I did notice that when you, in your opening, you went on about macroevolution, right? And
Correct.
So, and like you said, you came out and said that creationists would say that those are the same species per se, right? So I don't feel like we saw the changes that we should see regarding evolutionary theory, because let me just also say this. I know I'm going on, but I think when God completed the evolution or however he did it, I think it was over. So I think that's why we don't find transitional fossils. I think that's why we don't see speciation changes, and we won't. I think the DNA is coded, and the evidence suggests that it'll stay there, and we're never going to see changes. That being said, I'm almost done. That being said, so we see things like right now with climate change, there's a lot of birds that are changing wingspans, right, in very rapid like decades. They're starting to get smaller bodies, wider wingspans. Their anatomies are changing. Same thing with Darwin's finches. We see the beak sizes. Originally he thought this was over time evolution, and we've learned that these beaks actually change within generations. They're coded into the DNA, right? So I think when we see things like this, like you said, macroevolution, what we're seeing is adaptations or microevolution, basically like what you said with the medicines, right? I don't consider these medicine and bacteria changes to be a form of evolution, rather an adaptation. They're adapting to survive. They're not actually changing like Darwinian theory expects that they should. But I've talked enough, so you go ahead and address that. Hopefully it helps.
You're good. You're good. So you, I think I'm still going to continue to learn exactly what you mean. But so you think animals did evolve from some kind of sea creature and then to sky creatures and then to land creatures, and you think that took like long periods of time, or was it 7 literal days?
Well, so that's like I don't know if necessarily like you mentioned, time frames can be changed with the biblical narrative. I'm not opposed. I think God could do it in 7 days. I'm not opposed to that. I'm not opposed to time as well. But I think that the issue here is that we can, like I said before, we can observe rapid changes due to the coding, like these birds changing, right? So I think evolution happened in a certain span, if that's how God did it. And I think the Bible kind of alludes to that. And once that span of time was done, it was shut down. So I'm not sure if it was a long time or if it was a short time. I'm not opposed to
Because
either.
if it was a long time, you would probably be seeing transitional fossils.
Well, no, because so this is the thing. When the biblical narrative, when God was creating, nothing died, right? There was no death on the earth. So however long God was creating, there was no death. That's why I say I'm not opposed to short spans or long spans, however
Well,
he
then
did it.
it wouldn't be evolution then if they're not dying.
Exactly. It would be some form of rapid
Okay.
changing evolution that God, however he did that, right?
Okay.
But
So
that's why I think we don't find transitional fossils that we should find, is because nothing was dying at
okay.
that time. And if evolution went on for billions of years or hundreds of millions of years, like stated, we should find a vast variety of transitional fossils that are like apparently transitions. We have fossils like the whale anatomies, lineage or whatever. But what we're
we do
seeing
have
here,
transitional fossils.
yeah, so what we're seeing in those fossils, though, is we're seeing productive species. People are connecting them down the lineage, right? But in evolution theory, if we're going to see transitional fossils, it should be so apparent that something was transitioning from one thing to the other. We can't just show like a smaller dog and then a bigger dog and say, oh, those two are related because of anatomy. What you're showing is two species. That's fine. Maybe evolution's true, and maybe that's absolutely right. Maybe they are related, but that's not enough evidence to claim that that problem is solved because a few species throughout history had similarities in their anatomy.
It's not a few species, it's basically all species. Like I was giving multiple examples in my opener about different animals that have transitional fossils as evolution would predict they would find for them. Whales, horses, and humans have transitional fossils. This isn't like a cover up. They're not there. They're there, and they're in museums as we speak that you can observe firsthand, that biologists have studied for hundreds of years and agree that it's not that they're just similar, it's that they are so similar that the only reason they would be so similar is that they would have been related to each other. And you can see, and not only are they related to each other, that you can see reasons why they would have evolved from each other, right? It makes sense that one would want to that certain species would evolve certain directions, and that's the exact thing we see in all of these cases. Is like evolution makes sense because that's how adaptation is. And you also seem to be, you keep on wanting to say that microevolution is adaptation and it's not evolution because it's just adaptation, but I think you're getting that confused because that's evolution. That's what evolution is that it changes and then it adapts and then the old ones die. And it doesn't matter that it's on a short timeline. It's still evolution, just on a shorter time span.
Yeah, so you're right. It's evolution. So the word evolution is a word in itself. It means to evolve and change, right? Evolution theory, Darwinian evolutionary theory specifically, is the idea that all organisms originated from one single cell, right? This is the idea of Darwinian evolution theory. The word evolution just means to adapt and grow, right? So yes, they're the same thing. But when we're talking about like medicines and bacterias, how they're adapting to survive is not doesn't prove whatsoever that they all were one organism at one time. It's just showing that each organism among its species has the ability to adapt to environments to survive. And we can observe this all the time. But what we don't observe are speciation changes. Like you said, the mosquitoes in the cave that weren't able to breed. There's still mosquitoes, right? What we need here is something tangible where we see an actual creature shift
Yes,
to
but you
another creature.
but you understand that process is longer than humans have ever recorded history. So you can't observe that because
What?
it takes a long, you can't observe, you understand that water eats away at rock structures, right? You understand that that happens on a simple small scale and you can observe it directly, but you will never observe the Grand Canyon be created by the erosion that water used to make it. Like you can't observe that because it would take millions of years to observe that erosion. But we know it is erosion because that is the logical way that it would have occurred. As we know, it's on a smaller, we can see it on a small scale, and we understand what that would influence it to be as a larger scale. And it's exactly what we observe in real life. So that small scale adaptation, as you call it, that microevolution, is simply that. It's just a small scale version of, if you stretched it out over a long period of time, would be such a large difference you would never have associated with the previous one. Right? Does that thing, you think that would be impossible?
No, yeah. So I know that that's what they say, right? Over it takes a lot of time, so we can't observe it. I find that convenient, but so, and I see where you're going. I'm not trying to be rude. I
Yeah.
see where you're going with it, right? And it does make sense in the big picture, right? Like evolutionary theory does make sense the way they put a lot of work into this, right? So if you just give it lots of time, these compiled changes will change. But then you have things like the birds that are changing in front of our eyes from climate change. You have things like the beaks that were manipulated. They manipulated beaks in chicken embryos and turned them into a snout merely by moving some proteins over. You have the Darwin finches, these beak changes over short periods of time.
So you can observe it.
But yeah, but you're not, see, what you're observing is changes among a species. So I'm saying that if we can see these rapid giant abilities to change very, very quickly, then there's no reason that we should have to say, oh no, it takes millions of years to change species. If this is the case, if we can change a beak into the DNA is already coded to change a beak to a snout in an embryo in a few, in a lab, there's no reason that these giant leaps to speciation changes should be happening in front of our eyes in nature, because this is how they're said to have happened to begin with. So even though we can observe how easily nature could do something, because we can do it and we can see what we've done to the earth and the changes that are happening among these species. So even though we can observe these rapid giant changes, they're single species. We should be able, that being said, we should be able to see speciation changes, at least, like humans, for example. Humans were around for 300,000 years, supposedly, right? Homo sapiens. Homo sapiens were relatively unchanged for 300,000 years. But they say 6 million years ago, which isn't that far, it's like what, times 18 or something like that? 6 million years ago, they had 8 feet, right? They had hanging knuckles, they had a different pelvis, they had different foramen magnums, they had different, all these differences that supposedly happened in a 6 million year span, but then we see humans are 300,000 years old apparently, and nothing changed. Like,
Okay,
where
do you think nothing has changed? Do you think our DNA today is identical to the DNA of humans 300 years ago? Do you think it's identical?
I don't think humans, I don't think humans are 300,000 years old, but
Okay.
I mean,
If it was,
in
if it,
accordance with the idea,
yeah,
we can't prove whether or not, right? I mean to
I'm
cut you
not
off.
saying prove it. We're
Okay,
talking
so
about
that's what I'm saying.
theoreticals right now.
Theoretically,
Theoretically,
yeah.
theoretically, if evolution, or theoretically, if the world was that long, do you think DNA today would be identical to the DNA 300,000 years ago? The answer is
I mean,
probably not, right?
if they're Homo sapiens, I mean, it should be relatively similar.
But not
Like,
all relatively similar is not the same as identical, right? It would be similar, but it would be different. Just like how my DNA is different than your DNA, even though we're both Homo sapiens, right?
perhaps, but
Right,
this
that
is
would make sense.
speculation, right? We're just like, I see where you're going
We're
with
just
this,
seeing
but
if I'm logically consistent about my
yeah,
argument,
you're
right?
logically consistent. I understand where you're saying, but I
Yeah,
mean, it is speculation. So yes, from what you're saying, if evolutionary theory is real, it's likely the DNA did have differences back then,
it does
right?
make it.
But from what
Yes,
they say they observe, we have all the important traits. We're still the human species, and that's my point of
right.
speciation. We still have the same same feet, the same spines, the same foramen magnum, the same pelvis, the same hips. We have all these things that would have had to have traced back then with our chromosome counts to make us Homo sapiens. That's
Sure,
the issue. But only
it's not
18
an
times
issue.
that back, we were apes. Do you not see the giant leap here? And the
18
300,000 years,
times that? That's a
well,
longer,
what's
much longer
6
time.
million divided by 300,000?
The point is it's much longer, we establish, and it's much longer, and that would make sense. You'd be much more different because it's much like this is supporting what I would say. That doesn't contradict anything about evolution. That's exactly how it would work.
So, but so why do they say that 300,000 years ago humans, Homo sapiens existed? Why were we not something else? Why are they still saying Homo sapiens?
So
It's because
so
the
you
current
see,
anatomies we have.
that's one of the fallacies that a lot of creationists have in them, is that they think they think the concept of species and I guess kinds as well are very hard lines, and they're anything but. Because like even in science, like we establish, we divide things up by different species. We do that because they look very different from each other, and we try to categorize them, right? But in the fundamental aspect of evolution and how biology works, every individual creature is different from each other, right? Every single one. I'm different from you, even though we're the same species. And there's someone extremely different than the both of us, but is still our species. And but we're all still different from each other. We just try to categorize them, even though we're on a spectrum of genetics. There is no hard line between this species and this species. You can try to make up some, maybe like reproductive lines, right? That could be a hard line that you arbitrarily label things as defined in that one position. But still, at the end of the day, every individual organism is its own. They are all unique. And that's the thing, is humans 300,000 years ago were definitely different than the humans today, and the humans 300,000 years before that were different than that, and it keeps on going over and over. It's not like we just snapped our fingers and we popped up as human beings. It was a slow, arduous process that over hundreds of thousands of years, that it supports exactly like times 10 the years before that, we're going to be gorillas. Times 10 before that, we're going to be walking on all fours as mammals. Like, that's exactly what evolution would predict. That's not contradictory at all.
So it would predict that, but what I'm trying to point out here is that Homo sapiens, so they trace us back to 300,000 years. Homo sapiens are you and I, right? So yeah, there might be somebody else that's different, and maybe they have different traits, whatever. They're still Homo sapiens. We can still share blood. We're still the same species.
But you see, that's the problem. What do you mean same species?
So species is a hard thing to define from your
It is.
perspective because if you stop breeding with something, you're still the same creature, right? So like you said with the mosquitoes can't breed anymore, but it's still a mosquito, right? So
What
so I
what
mean,
but why do you say it's the same species though? It can't breed anymore. Why do you say it's the same species?
because it's the same anatomy. It's like me and you were born a certain way, right? If I was born If someone brought you a human child, right, and this human child had some crazy variation in their blood that they've never seen before,
Okay.
and they said, what is this? Would you say it's something else, or would you say it's a human being? Right?
So,
We're known by our anatomies. That's how we're
right.
identified.
Right. That's true, but again, it's a spectrum because we as humans try to use common sense to categorize things, but when you get down to the individual quantitative measurements you have to make it scientific, you realize there is no generalities in when it comes to species. Every individual is unique. It's kind of like the color spectrum. Like we identify different colors, red, yellow, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple. But in the spectrum of color, there is no one red color, right? It's red area and everywhere in between orange and purple. It's all kind of just red, and we just categorize it as red, but really there's quantitative measurements on exactly what the color is. And for us, it's our DNA. And there is no one person who matches each other in their DNA. They're somewhere on the spectrum of what a human is. Some can be less human, some can there are like Neanderthals were so different than us, we decided to just categorize them completely differently. But just within the species of human, we're all different from each other. And some humans could establish closure on one island and others on another island. And they go so far that they don't breed for so long that they can't breed anymore. And there's nothing preventing that from happening. And they could evolve separate timelines that would make them so different they wouldn't even look at each other and think they're related anymore. Like there's nothing physically preventing that from occurring. And then at that point, you'd say, oh, they're different species, if you didn't know that they originally had common ancestry. Does that make sense?
Sure, yeah. I see that the problem here, like, is I see what you're saying, but the problem here is the word species, right? Like, is what
Yes.
is it, right? So
It's
when
arbitrary.
it's arbitrary,
It
it's
is.
completely up
Just
in
like
the air. Like,
kinds.
kinds, yeah. So the way I rectify what I think the biblicals, and I can get into it and explain it why I think this, but with the biblical account for a kind, I think the Bible's describing blood, right? So how is our blood, like what's the makeup of our blood? And this is true, like even apes are what, 98% of our DNA, right? They say. So we still
Mhm.
can't share our blood with an ape. We still can, it'll kill us. Whereas humans, we can all share blood with each other so long as
Oh,
we have
let's
the
just
right factors.
let's pull that back.
Sure, yeah, go for it.
We cannot share all blood with each other.
As long as you have the same factors. So like your types. So we all have the different types, but we're
So we're
humans.
not the same.
But we're
So did that, but
humans,
that
right?
completely destroys that whole theory.
It
You
doesn't
just
though,
said it's
because
about blood.
no, because we're human beings. So
So it
you
has
could
nothing to do
be,
with blood.
yes, listen, you could be like an A and someone else could be a B, right? And you're not going to be able to share blood, but
Exactly.
what you do have is you have the same blood count, red blood count sizes, right? You have the same viscosity. You have all the same attributes of your blood, which is why they can actually take your blood with small manipulations and they can put that in you, right? They just have to. There's the type is an issue, right?
The
With
type.
exactly, but we're humans, so we all have the same blood types. So there's A,
No, we
B, A,
don't.
B, right? A, B,
Yes,
A, B, O.
yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so we can all share this with each other. So yeah, you have to find a person that's A, right? But you have to find a
Yes.
person that's B to match your blood. But the point is it's human blood. You're not going
But
to be able to
but your point
A.
is you're just hand waving the whole point. It's human blood. Why do you say it's human blood?
Okay, so say you're an A, right?
Sure.
If a chimp is chimps are the same, A, B, and B and O, or sorry, A, B, and O, I think they are. So if a chimp has A and you're A, can you share blood with him?
If a human is A and you're B, can you share with them?
Well, no, but that's the thing, we're the same species. We can still give it to another human. So yes, we all have the factors that are different amongst the blood. But the point is as a human being, we are the only ones that are able to share blood. So yes, you must find the person that matches your type. But the
You're
reason
dividing
why you can
people up by
find
blood type, man.
but
I
listen,
don't.
the reason why you can find a person that matches your type is because I already explained. It's the same red blood cell sizes, roughly the same counts, the same viscosity, the thickness. All these
Viscosity.
factors play this role when you're transfusing blood. This is why you can't take an A type ape chimp and put it into an A-type human, even though we're supposedly so similar, because those variations among their blood your body will reject it, regardless whether you're the same type or not. Whereas a human, yes, we all have four major or eight major variations, but we all have the blood is the right kind for a human. Our blood goes into a human. So as long as you find we'll put it this way, give me another creature who can have the same blood type as you that you can share blood with.
The reason why your whole theory is an issue is because you're dividing people up by blood types, and you're saying they're different species because they have different blood types, because I can't share my blood type with an A positive person if I have B positive blood. So, and your whole theory is if I can't share blood with them, then I'm not part of the same species. Then you're dividing your species up by blood types. And to say, oh, but you're still humans, but you're defining humans by blood types. And then you're saying, but actually it's all blood types are humans because they're all humans. It's a circular reasoning argument. There is no valuable like takeaway from that blood, because it would almost make sense if we could all share with each other. But even if that was true, it wouldn't support, it wouldn't deny evolution's possibility. But it doesn't even matter because we can't all share with each other. So the whole theory falls on its face.
But we can, right? You're focusing on the blood types, but what
You're
you're
the one who
missing
brought
here,
up blood.
yeah, because what you're missing here is only humans can share it. So you're focusing on this idea that, oh, well, humans, that we have 4 different blood types. And if I have this blood type, I can't give you my blood and he can't give you his blood. But what you're jumping past is the fact that our blood, whether you're A, B, whatever you are, our blood is designed for humanity. It's designed for humans. I can't give it to a chimp. I can't give it to a dog. I can't give it to anything else. A dog can't give it to me. A chimp can't give it to me. And if a human has O blood, he can give blood to anybody. So all it is like whether it's mutations or whatever happened throughout history that gave these differentiating blood types. But the point is human blood is human blood. If you take blood to the lab and it's sorry.
I do want to jump in right quick and just say it does seem like we have aired out a lot of points, and I do think our audience and both of you understand where you disagree with each other. And if you guys wanted to clarify just for the sake of putting a bow on it, that's fine. But if you guys wanted to push into some different territory, I think maybe we aired out some of, like I say, where we differ on this.
Yeah, I think we're kind of good on that point.
Sure. Let me just say really quick. Let me just say really quick, because I was almost done the point. The blood, if you take blood to a lab, they're going to be able to tell you what species it is, right? They're going to be able to check it and say, that's a human, that's an ape, that's a dog. So that right there, whether it's A, B, O, whatever it is, lab is going to test it and see. But anyways, let's move on. What did you want to jump to next?
So, and it's kind of similar, but DNA similarity, right? That was one of the points I was making, and you brought it up in your opener as well. So do you believe that DNA in paternity tests and in the 23andMe tests are valid tests that can determine your lineage?
Yeah, so the similarities, they can determine who you're potentially related to in the human species. Yeah.
So where does that stop being relevant? Because we think we can continue doing it far down the bloodline to different species. So why do you think it works with paternity, but not longer past that?
Because it's fine. Like if the similarities in blood or in DNA, sorry, the similarities in DNA are showing so if a creator designed everything, like the engineering science, if a creator designed these things, he's going to use similarities, right? Same thing with an ape. They have our same traits. Right? This is why we're seeing this in the DNA.
Can I challenge that for a second? So you say if we have a common creator, they would have a common final design, right? Let me ask you this. Evolution dictates we would have to be similar. Like there's not another option where we could be completely different, because evolution dictates that they would be similar according to the lineage. Could you, as an all creative, being, have 2 distinct creations that are not similar at all? Could you? Of course you can.
Of course, yeah. God could create.
So The similarities in the final design is not a prerequisite to having a common creator. You could have a common creator and have millions of different completely unique distinctive designs. So just because we're distinctive is not a point towards theism or towards creation. In fact, it's only a point towards evolution, because evolution says we have to be similar. There isn't an option to be different.
I mean, so that's the same thing. So if you look at the octopus, it has they don't even know where this DNA came from, the octopus. It's so off the wall compared to everything else. And they even
Well,
tried
let's
with the
just keep it
notion
to
that
monkeys, though.
it came off a meteor. This, for a while, they had this idea that it latched to a meteor because its DNA is so different. But that being said, yes, the creator could design it however they want, and evolution
Right.
says that it should be similar because we're related.
It has to be
Um,
similar.
it has to be similar because we're related.
But with God, it
But
doesn't have to be similar.
so it's engineering science. The observable evidence of how engineering works is if something created it, if an intelligence orchestrated this creation, we would see things similar, because that's how
It's not
engineering science
true.
works. If
It's not
something
true.
in engineering science, if something's working, do they continue with it, or do they discard it and completely start over from scratch?
It's so if you're making something different, this isn't like God was doing trial and error here. This is an all-knowing, all-powerful person. The point is, he can make whatever he wants anytime he wants, and there's no requirement that he needed to make anything similar to anything else. He could have made purple, purple, purple A, and orange B, and green L. Like there could be zero distinctions, and that would still just have as much evidence as a common creation. There's no benefit, because God can do whatever he wants. But evolution requires, there isn't any other option. So you're taking something that is pro evolution and is not needed in theism, and you're attributing it to theism, whereas the reverse is what's true.
So the reason why evolution requires the DNA is also similar is because evolution knows that it is. If we looked into our DNA and saw that it was so different and everybody was different in things, they would still connect that somehow, some way. They would say, "Oh, that's
No,
what we
they
expect to
wouldn't.
see." They absolutely would. See, so you're doing the same thing with a God, though, right? So you're speculating what God should do. And then when I speculate what they should do, you say no. But when you speculate what my God should do, that's how it is.
I'm not
God is
saying what God
brilliant and he
should
used what he
do.
used, right?
I
Just
never
like
used the word
evolution.
never used the word should. I never said what God should do. I'm saying God dictates he can create anything he wants. He didn't need to create things similar. It could have been another option. There could have been a separate option that was not the option of creating non-similar things. Evolution doesn't have that option. Evolution only has one option, and that one option is similarity. God has an infinite number of options. One of them was similarities, and there's another infinite number of options that include non-similar things. So there could have been an infinite number of other things that were he was creating that did not require similarities, but it just happens to be the one that matches evolution's prediction perfectly. That couldn't have been any other way. Then you
Well,
say if they had no similarities at all, we would have still fit it to evolution.
Yeah.
How? The foundation of evolution is that they're similar. You
Well, they
couldn't
would just say there's
possibly
long
establish it
lineages.
as a
They would say, "Oh, there was
no.
long lineages, and this one switched, and this one changed into this." They would come up with some way, like they do every time something comes along that throws a wrench in evolution. They just backstep their way and backpedal it and make stuff up, right? So I'm speculating what
Let
they
me ask
would
you
do,
this.
but it's the same thing with the God. I was doing it to
If
point out that we're speculating, right?
if we did that, would that be scientific?
I mean, if things were all so different in the DNA that it just looked like a rampage, they would absolutely find a way. They would say, "Oh, well, like I said, oh, that's because this changed, and they must have did this, and they must have did that." It's the same thing with the atmosphere, the oxygen levels in the atmosphere. They do the same thing. They're like, "Oh, it fluctuated, so the oxygen went down, and animals got bigger, and then animals got smaller, and then it went up." Same thing with the Grand Canyon, like you pointed out, right? Oh, it was over a long time, and the Grand Canyon went up, and then it went down, and it was underwater, and that's how all the marine life got down there. Then it went up and it went down, and they have all these things that they fit in to
It's
make it
called
seem
using it's
reasonable.
called using indirect forms of evidence. You can't always be there to observe it firsthand, but you can observe the repercussions of certain events, and you can backtrack what likely happened in that event, right? Just because you didn't see it firsthand doesn't mean you can't know what is the most likely thing to have happened. Could evolution be wrong? Yes. But every single part of the fossil record and the DNA sequencing exclusively points towards evolution. God could have chosen a million other directions that didn't look exactly like the evolutionary theory, but he happened to chose the one way of designing apes and primates and humans to be so remarkably similar, so physically similar, so genetically similar that it just happens to point directly towards what evolution would say is what would be the case. But that just seems to be him trolling us.
Well, it's not about trolling. So what we're doing with evolution theory is we're taking evolutionary theory and fitting it into that idea, and then saying, oh, well, this isn't how God could it. Same with creationists. I don't know why so many creationists, given the biblical context, so many creationists, rather than taking evolution and looking at the things that do seem to be true, and taking that in and fitting it into their theology and saying, okay, this is how God did this, right? It's the same thing. They just discredit it because it's been used to disprove God. So if God used some form of evolution, whether rapid, whether in a day, whether in a billion years, however he did it, then we're seeing the genetic trail to his creation. We're not seeing the genetic trail and deception towards evolution. We're seeing how he did it. Just because we fit it into how we want to and then go, oh, why'd you do that, God? Why are you lying? It's irrelevant. He
Well,
created it this way.
It's pointing to the way that you're saying is not true. It's pointing to
Well,
a contradiction.
I'm not saying evolution is not true. Like I just said
No,
that.
you
I'm
are,
not
because you're saying human evolution is not true, which
human evolution, yes.
but the fossil record and the DNA record point to that it is true. They point in that direction. And it just so happens that God designed it that way to be just deceptive enough that it looks identical to what evolution would predict it would look like. And
Well,
if you didn't have this religion, if you didn't have religion, right? If you weren't a Christian and you saw all of the data points that point towards evolution, you would probably be an evolutionist, wouldn't you?
I think perhaps, yeah.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
So another point that I want to establish is you understand that everything is designed, right?
Okay. Yeah.
You'd agree?
Yeah,
Yes.
I do agree.
Everything's designed. Because of certain complexities, right? So
Among
I
other
want,
things, but yeah.
among other things. So if everything is designed, and nothing is not designed, you just agree?
No, the creation's design, yeah.
Right. How can you tell the difference between something that is designed and not designed? How can you tell the difference between those two things?
How can you tell the difference between something that's designed and something that's not? I would say it comes down to um uh like you said before, the DNA, how it's so rigorously. I would think that if evolution were real, there wouldn't be organization like there is in the DNA. It wouldn't be so well put together, complex, and organized. It would be such a mess. There'd be things that, like with random limbs, there'd be all kinds of strange things that we would see among our own species, right? The fact
No,
that humans, we all have this,
but you think everything is designed, not just
everything is
organisms.
designed. So yeah, oh sorry, back to your question. So
Right.
you want to know how what's the difference between a design and not
How
design?
could you
So
tell the difference?
I would say that's my personal belief, is I would say that if we looked at the DNA and what we saw, like even when Darwin, he figured that, like a cell was just going to be like a clump of, right, this non-complex thing. And now we understand what it is, and they still attribute it to his theory, fine. But he expected that it would be very basic and simple. This is what he expected we would find, because the idea of evolution is basic and simple. It's just things shape shifting over time, and
Hmm.
it should be a very simple, non-complex mess. Just like anything else that's random is a mess. Tornadoes don't come along and organize your table nicely, right? They make a mess. Chaotic
But
things.
but you think chaotic things are designed.
I think the atmosphere is designed, yes, and
So
it's in order with that.
so what characteristic would signify non-design?
So there's nothing that would signify non-design. What I was getting at with the tornado is that we see a random, it causes random chaos. It's the same idea as theory. It's just random, non-directed
Right.
mess of
So
crap.
would,
That was my point with that, right?
but would you, then you would agree maybe your position is non-falsifiable?
Well,
Because
I
you're
mean, if
admitting
you,
nothing could
but
never not be
I
designed.
think your position is non-falsifiable. And let me explain. Because what you're saying is despite everything we can observe in the natural world, right? Or sorry, in the physical world, among humanities, and our intelligence has led us to this conclusion that tornadoes don't organize your table and complexity doesn't just show up. And these things just don't happen the way we observe it, so organized, well put together, complex, and brilliantly put together as something like the DNA. We don't just observe these things just happening from nothing. So when you say, oh, well, we don't need an orchestrator to do this, right? It's your position that's unfalsifiable because everything else in the physical reality tells us that we do need intelligence to create order,
So
complexity, design.
so you're whatabouting me. You're trying to like you're trying to avoid my question a little bit. Is your
No, I don't know.
position
Sure.
falsifiable or is it not?
Yes. Yes, I think
Okay,
one day,
but
if we can observe a tornado organize my table, my position is falsified. Yes. How is your position falsified though?
that's the opposite of what you would say. If you saw a
Exactly.
tornado create a no. If you saw a tornado create a house or whatever the hell, the first thing that would come out of your mouth is God established this to happen.
No, no.
Excuse me?
If I saw a tornado organize, oh yeah, maybe I
Of course you would. That's the first thing you would say.
would.
No, it's fine. It's fine, but you're kind of a presuppositionalist. You want everything is designed by default. That's your default view. You would so if everything is designed, then you could never. There's nothing I could ever provide to you. There's no piece of data I would ever provide to you that would establish something is not designed. There's nothing that could ever show you. It's unfalsifiable. You would agree.
In that sense, but I could throw the
Yeah.
same thing back at you. So yes, I agree
Okay.
with your
Now let's go
question.
to
Now,
now let's
now
talk
let me
about me.
ask you the same thing. If we were to see something, or sorry, if since we've never seen anything or observed anything to come to fruition on its own from random chance, aside from nature, because that's your position, but in the physical
Nature is
world,
everything.
well,
Nature is
it's not
everything.
because it's unfalsifiable, like we just established, right? We can't falsify if God did it or not. That's what the whole topic is. So you can't turn to the question and make your conclusion based off of the question. You have to, in the physical world, what humanity has learned with our intelligent minds, is there
Mhm.
any examples of something coming to fruition without an intelligence orchestrating it?
So there are two categories of things in the universe, right? Things that are man-made and everything else that you would probably categorize as being called nature. So do you want something that's a part of nature that is well organized,
Man-made,
or do
man-made.
you want something that's man-made that is organized?
Something man-made without intelligence or without anything intervening that has come to fruition to show something as complex, organized, and designed, if you will, as
Something
nature
that
shows.
is man-made.
Something man-made. Yeah.
So you don't want me to say like computers or something?
Well, computers are designed. So
Uh,
computers
But you
are,
said man-made. If it's man-made, then it's designed by a human.
yes, and that's my point, right? Is
I don't
so even
understand your point.
a computer we can so a computer we can create a computer, right? That will then go on to create computers, right? So every
Okay.
time we observe an intelligence that's set out to do something, there's a mind behind it. What we'll never ever see is a computer just turn itself on, throw an operating system in, and head on out to create, right? This will
But
not happen.
what you're describing is only true because of your initial presupposition, right? Your presupposition is that everything in nature has intelligence behind it. Therefore, anything that pops up in nature that is organized needed intelligent design for its existence in the first place. Now, if you weren't a presuppositionalist and you established maybe there is or isn't a God and some things are designed and some things are not, then if you didn't believe in God, you would say, oh, there are things in nature that are complicated that did not need an intelligent being behind it. You could establish that if you didn't already have a preconceived notion about your religion. You would agree.
Well, yes, but I think that you also have a preconceived notion, and that's what I'm trying to get at here. So if I saw a tornado, like you pointed, if I saw a tornado organize a table, I probably would wonder what God's up to, right? I'd be like, well, what am I supposed to learn from this?
You know it would be
But
God.
yeah, I would, right?
Yeah.
But on the other side, it's the same for you. If you've never observed anything like that happen, right? If you observed a tornado organize your table, you'd be mind blown, but you wouldn't look to God, right? You'd be like, what is this all about, right? You'd be taking pictures.
I'm open
that's
to
what
God.
Oh, are you? Okay, so
Why
maybe
not?
that would convince you. But so then tell
Sure.
me, which is good. But if you take the idea that nothing in the observable world, as far as man-made, can come to fruition on its own, I'm just curious why you make that leap to say that an intelligence is not necessary to make something as so complex in design.
Great question. Great question. Because evolution does not break any laws of physics. Evolution is consistent with the laws of physics. Even abiogenesis doesn't break any laws of physics. And if it doesn't break the laws of physics, then it's possible, right? There is no law of physics that says, no, life can never come from non-life. Life is made of non-living particles, right? Every atom in your body is not alive. So if you organize non-living particles in a certain position, it will become a living organism, right? Life is generated from non-life. So that does not violate the laws of physics in any possible way. So why do I need to invoke miracles when there is no law of physics preventing it from happening in the first place?
Oh, so yeah, great. So the laws of physics. So is there anything in this observable reality that you are aware of is regarding the laws of physics that is eternal? That never dies, never begins, and never ends?
Not that, I mean, I don't know about the universe itself, but
But in the
nothing other
observable
than that.
reality, we
Well,
understand
I
time
mean,
as a
matter is eternal. There's no creation, no
exactly
destruction.
right. Exactly. So everything that
So
we can
what?
observe in the reality, in the realistic world, tells us that time starts a beginning and starts an end. There's no such thing
No.
as eternal in
I
there,
just
right?
said matter is eternal,
Matter.
right?
So exactly,
And
energy,
energy.
right? So you got to go back to
So there
energy,
is
and you have to
eternity.
say that's what they say because they don't want to look to God. So energy is eternal, right? So right there, you're
Okay.
breaking the laws of physics. What we
Whoa.
understand here.
There's no law of physics that says eternity
Well,
can't
sorry,
exist.
the law of logic. What we're
It's
saying
not
here in
breaking
the
laws of logic either.
I'll explain. What we're saying here in the physical reality is everything that we observe decays and begins. That's just the way it is. Even the
No.
stars, everything we see in the
So,
sky. Give me an
not true.
example of something that doesn't decay, doesn't begin
Energy
or
and
decay.
matter don't
You're going
decay.
back to see that's the thing. You're
You wanted an
invoking like
example
a
and now you
god.
don't like it.
Well,
You
because
want
I knew that was your example. I wrote it down.
Yeah,
And that's
because
the
it's the
point.
one thing that
It's the one thing. So you're okay with invoking something that's outside of the realm of reality as
it's
far
not
as we
outside the realm of
understand.
reality.
So it's eternal. So tell me where else in this physical world is something eternal?
I don't need to. It doesn't mean it's not within the realm of reality. That's
It
like
is.
saying that's like saying show me something that's in my house that's not actually and I say the couch. Oh, you just chose the couch just because it's in your house. Let me give me anything else that's in your house. And I'm like, there's nothing else in my house. And it's like, see, you what? You're just gonna use the couch just because it's an exception to the rule? And it's like, no, I gave you exactly what you asked for, and now you're unhappy with
But
the
I'll
answer I gave
explain.
you.
I'll explain it to you because the reason why I brought it there, and this is the same thing with evolution theory. Everything that we can observe is one specific way, to the point where somebody would come in and say, "You said, oh, where did that couch come from?" And he was like, it was just here forever, man. It's eternal. You'd be like, what a stupid thing to say. It's the same with evolution, right? Everything, the complexity of a single cell just showed up. But anybody told you anything else, hey man, this couch just showed up, you'd be like, that's ridiculous. But you'll break it for evolution and you'll break it for energy.
I'm
But
not
then you
breaking
turn to
anything.
me and say that I'm invoking some spiritual thing
Which you
that's
are.
outside. I am, but so are you, in my opinion. You're
Right.
saying that nothing created the most complex thing we've ever seen in the history of humanity, and something that eternal spawned every single thing, including that complex thing that's most complex than anything in reality. These
Right.
two phenomenons just appeared here, and one of them's eternal, right? Like, this is how you're projecting your ideas towards, you'll break the rules for these things.
It's not
Other
breaking
than
the
that, you
rules.
won't.
That's how we make the rules. That's not breaking the rules. That's because the laws of physics and science and all of that stuff, all it's pursuing is consistency, right? All the pursuit of science and logic is trying to make sure we're consistent. And if we see something that's an exception to the rule, we will change the rule to incorporate that exception because it will accept. That's why science changes over time, right? We have to accept new data that might disprove our previously held notions. So, so when you talk about something always being there, and there happens to be something that was always there, that's not an exception to the rule. That's what the rule is. Matter is always there, and everything that matter is made of is still made of matter. It's just different forms of it. So those different forms change over time, and we call them death and life and birth and rebirth. But in reality, it's just different forms changing over time. We categorize things. Again, we're humans. We love to categorize things, but there's nothing inherently different about something alive from a materialist perspective. They're all just still atoms that is changing over time. And you were also talking about oh dang, you're talking about something else, but
Can I address that? What do you think?
yeah, you can go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So okay. So the you said you'll break the rules. There's exceptions to the rules when we discover them, right? So okay, fine. So, but this is where it gets interesting, because the Bible, long before we had these exceptions to the rule, the Bible predicted that the creator of everything that's in all existence created is eternal. And the God Bible also predicted that the most brilliant being in the history, like that we can't even fathom the intelligence of this being, coded our DNA, coded how we're, maybe they didn't call it DNA, but coded us. So we have two things here. We have the most intelligent being that we can't even comprehend created us. Therefore, that is a prediction that we're probably not. We're going to find some pretty intelligent signatures when we get deep into it, and we did. DNA and even the single cell. It's wildly full of information and detail that is far beyond our heads at this point. And the same thing with the eternal God. Back then, they predicted God's eternal. He's everywhere. You know what I mean? He's in the beginning. When you die, you go back to him, right? Like, these are all things that the eternal God was attributed to thousands of years before we had these exceptions. So my question is, if we have these exceptions to the rule and you're willing to break it for those things, why doesn't it interest you that the Bible predicted that these are the things that we should extend the rules for? The two things we extend the rules for are what God predicted. It's him. And you're willing to go against logic and reason for those, but you're not willing to step over across the line and say, well, the Bible got that right.
So we're not willing to go above logic and reasoning to establish the laws of physics. Laws of physics is just trying to ensure we are being consistent with what we are observing. If there's anything that is outside of those laws, we change the laws themselves because we have to be consistent. We can't just go by one law, and if some direct provable, evidence proves otherwise, then we have to change our laws, not change the evidence, right? So your perspective of God is eternal, I mean, it just sounds like it's just a religious claim that lots of religions say, and God made humans. That's what every other religion says as well. Their creator, made humans. And you know what? Maybe there is a creator out there somewhere. That's absolutely possible. But it doesn't account for, if you want to say that it's so concretely that it created everything without evolution, then you can't possibly look at all of the data points of evolution and then say, oh, all those data points are exceptions to the rules. because then you're not being scientific anymore, right? You're not going based on the data. You're not fitting the conclusion to the evidence. You're now going to start trying to fit the evidence to your preconceived conclusion. You've already decided that God is the creator. So there's no amount of evidence that's going to change your mind. And it doesn't matter if I have all of the evidence of evolution in the world. It's not going to change your mind because you already decided what your conclusion is. Science is malleable. Science changes when new data comes along. We didn't know evolution was there for the longest time. But then once someone came up with a good idea, we're like, well, that's an interesting idea, Darwin. That's a good hypothesis. Let's see if there's any more data that backs it up. And guess what? Every possible prediction evolution made when it comes to DNA and fossil records was proven to support that hypothesis, transitioning it from a hypothesis to a theory and really a fact nowadays because it's established in many fields of physics, not just biology. So I also want to ask you about your concept of abiogenesis. Do you think abiogenesis, do you think, let me ask you this, thought experiment. If we had an infinite amount of time and there was a bunch of molecules swishing around somewhere and it keeps reconfiguring all those points of molecules and atoms in a finite amount of space, and you had an infinite amount of time, would eventually those atoms construct themselves in a productive manner? Have you ever heard of the infinite monkeys on a typewriter thought experiment?
No, don't think so. Maybe once we get into it. So you're saying that if there were an infinite amount of molecules and they were given enough time, would they organize themselves into something reasonable and productive?
Yeah.
I mean, I mean, it's speculation. So like,
it's
I
not
would
speculation.
I would say no. After so much time, I don't see why if you gave molecules billions of years or
not billions, like infinite.
Infinite amount of time, why should it orchestrate itself into something reasonable?
Okay.
Why should
it's because after an infinite amount of time, you will have reached every possible combination of those molecules. So every possible iteration and combination of those molecules will have been accounted for. I would have shown up there because it would have been an infinite amount of time. Every human being that ever existed would have shown up because it's an infinite amount of time and combinations of all molecules. So do you understand how, yes, it would eventually show something productive?
I see what you're saying. So what you left out though is in an infinite amount of time, if the molecules constantly reorganize themselves, right? So you left that part out. So yes, if the molecules constantly reorganize themselves to different shapes constantly, right? It was never the same one twice.
It could be the same one twice.
Well, if it could be the same one twice, why wouldn't it just be the same one forever? Why would we ever get anything other than that one specific size?
Well, there's a tinge of randomness there too, right? It doesn't always have to be different. The same one can show up multiple times, but there is some movement involved in it and the initial conditions. Like there's movement. That means things change over time.
If they were, I'm still not completely, if the molecules were constantly rearranging themselves into random shapes and they could do the same shape twice or not, but just forever organizing themselves, why would you assume that they would create you?
Because they would create anything that could ever been created.
Potentially.
No. If you have an infinite amount of time, it will, because everything will have happened no matter what, because you have an infinite amount of time.
But why wouldn't it just create things that aren't, why doesn't it create everything except you? Infinite amount of time, why does it have to make you?
Because it would
there's infinite possibilities beyond you.
Right. It would have reached all of them. It would have reached all of those infinite, including me. It would have reached everything.
So do you think if Earth was reset and evolution was, do you think everything would be here the same way? Do you think if the Earth was here for the infinite amount of time, do you think you and I would be sitting here one day again talking like this?
Of course, because you're talking about an infinite amount of time.
So you believe in predetermined, you believe that everything is predetermined?
No.
Then how would we end up here having the same conversation given an infinite amount of time for the Earth to reset?
Because unless there's a law preventing us from happening, unless we have a law specifically preventing something from happening, anything that can happen will have happened. Because you have an infinite amount of time. And you have an infinite amount of combinations that would produce an infinite number of things that would have meant everything would have been produced. If it could have been produced, it would have been produced. Does that not follow? So,
I see what you're saying, man, but I just don't agree with it whatsoever. I don't understand the logic in this. I think that there's infinite possible. I think that if God wasn't real and everything was reset, the earth was completely started over and everything happened again, and evolution theory is real, I think there's no way in hell you and I would be sitting here one day.
well,
We
yes,
wouldn't even look the same. There'd be nothing
no,
similar
but
about us.
when I invoke infinity, I'm not really talking about normalness anymore. If the universe, because we've been here for 13 billion years, that's nothing compared to infinity. Infinity means everything, every possible iteration of anything will have
What do you
happened
mean by
with it.
normalness?
Normalness as in we've only been here for 13 billion. That's nothing. So if we had another 13 billion, would I show up again identical to the way I am now? Probably not, because 13 billion is very small amount of time when reference to an infinite amount of time. So the point I was trying to get at is there's this philosophical concept of an infinite amount of monkeys typing on an infinite amount of typewriters, right? And if you have that, one monkey will wind up writing a Shakespearean play. Does that make sense to how that would work out to you?
Not even in the slightest.
Okay.
I don't follow that. I think that infinite amount of time, you could have a monkey sitting on a typewriter for an infinite amount of time and he will never make one coherent word. Or you could have a monkey sitting on a typewriter for an infinite amount of time and he'll write a Shakespearean play, maybe even one that already existed. But there's no way to tell what he's going to write based on the fact that he's never leaving the chair. I don't follow that. So before you touch on that, I just want to go back. You said infinity is against normalness. Didn't you say that? So
Yes.
what's eternal? Is eternal against normalness? And if so, why?
So we don't know what happened before the Big Bang. So whatever happened
Sure.
before the Big Bang is against normalness, I would say.
Okay, but I'm just
happened
referring to the idea, right? You said that infinity is another way to say eternal, right?
Yes.
It's just non-ending. So if you
Yes.
called infinity, and I'm not trying to got you, I just wanted
Okay.
honest. So if
It
you
is
call
against
infinity,
normalness.
exactly, right? So why do you accept it in specific circumstances, even though it's completely against normal? Same with evolution. Why do you accept a cell that shows how complex and designed and how everything's put together like brilliantly, and it's against normalness? We don't observe this like infinity. We don't observe this
Because
anywhere
we can
except for these circumstances.
explain why it would be there. It is absolutely beautiful and amazing, and what's in my cell is absolutely mind-boggling. But we can still explain using our laws of physics why it's here. We can explain it. Now, can we recreate it? No. But we can still explain it. I can't recreate the Grand Canyon, right? There's so many reasons why I can't recreate the Grand Canyon, but I know why the Grand Canyon's there. And I don't have to have any exceptions to my laws of physics to establish why the Grand Canyon is there, right? I don't have to have been there to observe it firsthand to know how the laws of physics made this possible. I can backtrack using logic and reason to understand, okay, this thing is amazing. How did this thing happen? Oh, water does this. There's water here, and there's no reason to think it would have done anything else. Therefore, that's a logical answer. That is how evolution works. Like, we see absolutely amazing things in our cells. We're like, wow, how could that have happened? Well, if we go with the laws of physics and try to be consistent, then that could establish that we could have evolved. And not we could have, but we know evolution is true. You know evolution happens. Let me ask you this. In modern day world, does evolution happen?
And like, so we're back to the word evolution. So yes, evolution is a word that
Do
just
humans
means
evolve?
do humans. I mean, like, yeah, people are getting taller. There's environmental changes that do evolve us, right?
Okay, so
But
humans
we're
do
not
evolve.
evolve, but the word's different. When I say evolve, it's not like, haha, he accepted Darwin. I'm saying evolve is a
Yeah.
word that just means adapting and growing, right? That's we can evolve. I'm evolving every day. I'm learning things. I'm evolving in
But
this
so,
conversation, right?
well,
But that
Darwinian
doesn't mean
evolution.
Darwinian evolution.
So Darwinian evolution is essentially saying, in combination with random mutations and evolutionary natural selection, random mutations, natural selection, right? You believe those two things are real. That's what Darwinian evolution is.
Yes, sure. I
And you
don't, but
believe those two things are real.
Yes, but what
Therefore, you believe in Darwinian evolution.
Darwinian evolution is the idea that all organisms came from one single cell. That's what Darwinian evolution. So yes, natural selection, sorry, was it natural selection
and random mutations.
Random mutations. We can observe these things,
Okay.
right?
So,
And when we say random, most mutations are directed, right? Based on based on your environment. There's factors that make the mutation happen, right?
No, there's not.
In most cases, you don't. So in Darwinian evolution, you don't think that environmental factors, atmospheric factors, predator factors all played a role to the reason that certain mutations were selected to progress that species.
Yes, the way you framed that, yes. The way you framed those
That's
other
all
things,
I meant.
no. Then okay. But so it sounds like you completely believe in every aspect of evolution, and it's all happening right now. Everything evolutionists believe in is true now. You would agree?
What do you mean by that? Can you just
like every aspect of evolution? Evolution is random mutations and natural selection. That's all evolution is. And all of that is occurring all the time around us. And you're saying that's true. That's what evolutionists believe as well, right? You just believe in what happened before. You just believe in the history.
I believe, like I explained at the start. So I agree with you, things are adapting and things are changing. But I think when God created, whether he used evolution or not, I mean, it's not like I think it's a solid, dry cut case. But I mean, sure, the evidence is at least decent, right?
But everything a scientist believes happening right now, you're agreeing with everything that's like all of
except
evolution.
Speciation changes. I think that's adaptations to environment, but I think that's coded in our genetics. I think speciation changes are something different that we won't observe.
Okay, let's talk about speciation changes. Let's say there is a dog, and the dog evolves over time. You would understand that. You agree that would happen. Let's say it evolved over 10 billion years. Hypothetically, you don't believe in that, but let's just hypothetically say it does evolve over 10 billion years, over many, many different environments, over many different iterations of its likelihood. After 10 billion years, and if you looked at that creature and looked at the original dog that it started out as, you probably would think it's a different species.
Perhaps, but perhaps not.
So you do no, but the fact that it's possible means you do believe in interspecies evolution.
But see, then again, like, so
that's all it is.
But humans have intervened with dogs to such a degree that if this were that if this were to supposedly happen in nature, we're talking potentially 10 billion years with the amount of messing with our dogs that we've done. And I can tell you, there's not a single dog on this earth that you couldn't bring to me. My dog looks like a rat. You know what I mean? She's like half Chihuahua, half Jack Russell. She looks like a rat, but I know she's a dog. And what's more, she knows who's a dog. She sees any other animal out there, she doesn't care. But it could be the weirdest looking dog you've ever seen in your life, and she knows what that animal is, right? They know what they are. And I don't think after all that time, it necessarily equates to me not being able to tell it's a dog.
No, but I just put 10 billion as a random number. Let's say it's 100 quadrillion years. The point is, there is a finite amount of time that eventually it would look so dramatically different that you would not associate it with the original ancestor. You would have looked at it and it looks so dramatically different. You wouldn't have been like, oh yeah, that thing and that thing are related to each other, because it changes over that time. And it's constantly changing. The more time you give it, the more it changes. And there is an eventual amount of time that your intuition will be wrong. You'll be like, oh, I intuitively don't think that's related to that thing, right? You look at two human beings and you're like, oh, you guys look like siblings. And they're like, no, we're not related at all. I'm like, oh, my intuition was wrong. Or I'll be like, oh, you guys look completely different. And they're like, oh, no, we're brother and sister. And we're like, oh, wow, I was totally wrong about the intuition. I thought you were not related, but you really are, right? My intuition isn't the end all be all. And that would happen over that long time span. Your intuition would eventually fail you because it would look so different. Does that make sense?
Sure, I see where you're going, but
okay,
also
so interspecies evolution.
But hold on, but on the same side, if a dog was to go on in the same environment, whatever happened, it's breeding, however long it happened, Do you think
Yeah.
that at the end of that time, it's going to be for certain that those dogs can't breed anymore? The dog at the start of the line and the dog at the back of the line, given that time, do you think it's certainty that they won't be able to breed?
I don't know why I need certainty about that. No, I'm just talking about what
Because
is and isn't possible. It's possible they might not breed. It's possible they might still be able to breed. But the very fact that it's possible they might not be able to breed means interspecies evolution is possible, which is all we're debating about.
sure. So if
So you
it's
agree?
possible, well, hold on. So I do agree to this extent what I'm saying. So yeah, if you gave it trillions of years and then I saw it then, perhaps it would look in a way that I wouldn't know it was a dog. But
Probably.
would my dog still know it's a dog? Is it still a
Not
dog? That's the
necessarily.
difference. I don't know, man. She can pick out some pretty weird dogs. And so is she going to know it's a dog? Or that aside, just because it doesn't look like the dog I am used to, that doesn't mean it's not a dog. If I was able to travel the road with that dog and watch it grow and progress and see the changes in among the species, if I was to be able to do that, then yes, I would know it was a dog at the end of the road, right? So we're just speculating to
We're
say,
coming full circle to exactly the point I'm trying to make. Is yeah, just because it looks very different than that other thing doesn't mean it's not related to that other thing. That's the entire point of why
sure,
humans don't look like apes, right? There's lots of distinguishing features between humans and apes. And intuitively, you would be like, oh, they're different. They're not related because they don't look the same. There's lots of differences. And
see, but
yet, science has proven us otherwise. The whole point of science, if our intuitions were always reliable, if they were always correct, science would be meaningless. The whole point of science is to establish truths that go against our natural intuition. And that is exactly what evolution has done. It proves things are related that were not originally thought to be related.
so yeah, so the ape, so if you took like a little kid that, you know what I mean, just knew its family and it went outside and it seen an ape, it might think it's a human, right? Just because something looks a certain way doesn't excuse it from, doesn't mean, oh, okay, well, that's part of the species. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that a look defines something. It's anatomy. So that ape down the road, it's going to have the same chromosomes potentially. It's going to have the same blood kinds. It's going to have all these anatomy attributes that are going to make it still a chimpanzee. Same with a human, billions of years down the road. How can you possibly say that just because we added billions of years, that that human is going to no longer be a human? You're just
I'm not
speculating there.
saying it will not be a human. I'm saying it is possible it will not be. And
But
you
why is
agree
it possible? Just
because
because
it
it
will be
looks different.
because aspects of itself will be changing. Not just appearances, but biological aspects. It could lose some limbs. Like it could establish that, oh, they start swimming more often and they decide, oh, you know what? We're going to be more of a water kind of people and we might diverge a little bit more that direction. And like there's so many there's an infinite number of factors that might change it to be an infinite number of different ways. And the the nothing in that thought process is violating any laws of logic or laws of physics. And at the end of that train, it not necessarily will, but it can look dramatically different than the original ancestor.
Yeah,
And
it
there,
can
and you
look,
agree.
it could potentially look dramatically different, but
Right.
that doesn't mean that its internal makeup is going to show such a change. Um, like just because something looks different, like we already established that people could think an ape is a human, people could think a dog is a rat. Just because something looks different doesn't change the fact that its internal makeup is still that of the species that it was before it was bred a
No,
certain way.
I mean, you're exactly right. And in fact, evolution states that you would still have similarities in your genetic makeup connecting you to that original ancestor, right? It would look unrelated. Your intuition says you're not related because you look unbelievably different. But when you understand how DNA works and genetics work, then you say, okay, now we can actually verify if my intuition is correct or not. And it looks like, oh, you're 98% similar. You're definitely related to this person. Probably not anytime recently because you're so dramatically different, but you're clearly were related at one point in the past. Does that logically follow for you?
Sure, I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. And what I'm
And
countering
that's
with that
what
is
human evolution is.
that things look different, and that's possible that something could look completely different. But what really matters isn't the outward appearance, it's what's on the inside.
The
No, but
DNA.
you know what I mean? It's the inwards, right? So it's your DNA, your blood, like all these
Let's just stick to
factors that
DNA.
make you what you are, right? Well, okay, so DNA, but there's more. There's lots of attributes that make a creature, like we talked about blood, right?
But those
Though
things
you
can
may
change.
disagree, but can they change?
Of course, like you could develop different internal organs. We have vestigial organs that we shouldn't even need anymore, that we wish we weren't born
I
with.
don't agree with that necessarily. I don't think that the organs. So we pulled that with the appendix and other organs. We said they were vestigial, and then we find out what they are. So humans, we think that we got everything solved and sorted out, and we make these claims that we have these useless organs, and then we find out that they're not useless, and we need them, right? Like your
No,
tailbone. You think your tailbone is useless? Why don't you take
partially
it out? Take it
be-
out.
because the invasive surgery is not needed.
Because you
But
wouldn't be
it's
able to
not
walk
useful.
without it, man. It is useful. Your
I
tailbone
don't.
is necessity. It helps you balance. It helps you sit. Right.
So
These
you
are
just
not
don't think
vestigial.
vestigial organs exist at all? Like wisdom teeth, we don't
No,
need wisdom teeth. We don't need the appendix. We don't need any. We don't
but
need certain organs.
wisdom teeth are just from our jaws changing due to atmosphere and our diets, especially. You
It's
take
still
humanity thousands of
vestigial.
years ago, and is a higher likelihood that wisdom teeth fit in a lot nicer. We had bigger jaws. See, the stuff we eat, we don't chew enough. We don't do these things
You're you're
that
you're
built up your
describing
jaw.
what a vestigial organ is. Yes, our environment changed, and now we don't need it anymore.
See, but
That's
you're
what
saying it's
vestigial
through
organ is.
evolution. This is just nothing changed in our DNA to change our jaw. The only thing that changed is how much we used it. So we stopped using our jaw so much and our teeth started to crowd. That doesn't mean it's vestigial. It just means an environmental. If we went back, if everything shut down tomorrow and we started chewing on trees again, there's a good possibility those wisdom teeth would come in fine and they would be productive.
You're
That
putting the
doesn't make
cart
it a
before the
vestigial.
horse. You're putting the cart before the horse. No, we do not need it today. Right.
Some people do. Some people is they don't have
Okay.
their teeth are
99%
weird
of
and it
people
grows
don't
in.
need their wisdom teeth. 99% of people don't need their wisdom teeth. Right?
Sure.
Then it's vestigial. That's
It's not
all it means.
vestigial. That's so okay. It's vestigial in the sense that you're
All it,
saying we currently don't need it. But
that's
what
what
if things
vestigial means.
change? But what if things change and tomorrow we did need it?
Then it
What
won't
if
be vestigial
what if a
anymore.
human being lost to see you're picking and choosing? What if a
I'm
human being
not.
lost their
I'm not.
teeth
Vestigial
and
only
those
matters
wisdom
to
teeth
right
came in?
now. That
But
vestigial only
there's other
matters to right.
people.
Yes, there's a million different possibilities of, oh, one day we might need it for one specific case. That's not how you define vestigial. Vestigial means, is it necessary right now? Is it useful to our productivity right now for 99.9% of all of our species? The answer is no, it's vestigial. This is a weird semantical debate that
But it's
is,
not
I don't
changes
think
in the
it's helping
DNA. So
anything.
I see your argument, and it's reasonable in the sense that wisdom teeth was a good one to hit on because it's the only one that's like this. So wisdom teeth, yes, because of the way we've changed our jaws today, you could call it a vestigial in that sense. But that doesn't. There's things today that we could start doing that would make those wisdom teeth necessary or productive to you individually. If you were
Sure.
born and you started chewing on trees every day or whatever differences you had to do to get your jaw bigger where those would fit in, it would no longer be
So
unnecessary.
I'll
Therefore, it's
concede
vestigial in
you,
theory.
you could reverse a vestigialness of an organ if you've really tried for some reason. I'm not
Well, it's
saying
not
that's
vestigial.
impossible. You could reverse the vigistal status. Whatever the
I
hell.
can't even think of it either now.
I don't know the word
Vestigial.
anymore.
So
We've
many
said it too many times.
words. Yeah, it gets hard
You
after a bit. Keep going though.
you
It's fine.
could
Hey,
you could
hey,
reverse
Ryan.
the
hmm
status.
Yeah,
Oh,
what's
I'm
going on?
sorry. Ryan, can you do like a promo and give me like 1 minute? I'll be right back
A
or something.
promo. I give you a promo too.
With your thing that you do. Is
Oh
that
yeah,
Potty
yeah,
okay?
yeah.
break.
We can
So
pull in
sorry.
the
Okay.
old
Sorry, William. I'll
broom.
be right back.
Yeah, yeah.
No worries.
Let's take a moment. We will go into the Q&A, I'm sure, shortly, everybody. So if you have questions for either of our speakers, get them in the old live chat. If you do a super chat, it will be read with priority. We have been going for what, an hour and 40 minutes odd, and hopefully everybody's been having a lot of fun. Actually, Funny side note, all of my teeth were very spaced apart, and my wisdom teeth forced them together very painfully, like a natural type of braces. Awful. It was not a fun process at all.
Jesus. Wow.
But let's see what's going on here. So I've been delivered a grilled cheese. Speaking of DNA, my daughter had her 10th birthday there not so long ago. So I got a projector, and the whole
Congratulations.
wall got turned into Super Mario Bro. For Super Nintendo, and we played it right through to the end. But anyways,
That's fun.
yeah, that was great, and I still have to paint the wall gray. It's like light gray that you want to make it, I guess, so that it brings out the colors. I was trying to play Halo on it the other night, and ODST is such a dark game. I could not.
It shouldn't be white.
Well, according to online, I don't know. I'm gonna try a couple different things. I put up to a white sheet, and it wasn't like as great as I thought it would be. Of
A
course, it was
white
kind of
sheet isn't
tacky.
the same as a white wall.
I
I feel
know
like a
it's gonna
white
be
wall
like,
would be
yeah, you're right.
better.
Um, but
Because we have
yeah,
a white wall that we painted for a projector, and
great.
I I don't know if gray would have changed it very much, but maybe it would have.
I don't know. I was watching a couple videos online, but I still have to do some work to get to that point. But anyways,
Mm.
we beat that and stayed up late. But yeah, speaking of DNA, a lot of people were saying about my wife when she delivered me a grilled cheese way back when, and there was
Mm.
always a lot of chat in it about the Sammy. So I was just delivered this from my daughter.
Ooh, looks good.
I'm not gonna eat
That's
it on
nice.
stream, but I can't. I don't think I can peel it apart. It is
Solid.
full of cheese. Good job.
That's beautiful.
Good job, child.
Oh, do we have any questions in the chat
We
yet?
sure
Or
we sure do have questions already, so
oh, good,
we
good.
can move into Q&A. It's up to you if you want to put a
No,
bow on anything. Oh, my
I
hands.
like.
I gotta.
I could talk. I could talk forever. It's you guys are the ones who are gonna have to tell me to stop talking,
Oh,
because I could keep going, but
all right. Well,
I'll go ahead.
we'll
Let you
play it
go.
by ear. When
Yeah,
evidence comes back, we'll continue on and see if we want to continue on, or if EOG wants to go into
yeah.
Q&A shortly.
I just wanted to check about the questions because the last debate I had no questions at the very end, and even I think you were the one hosting it with me and um Jake or something. But yeah, we had no questions, and you had to like stall and help us get more questions while we were talking. But I'm happy there are questions this time. Um, oh
Oh yeah,
gosh.
oh yeah. We got quite a few questions already, and yeah. Once again, that's a good time to once again make a little call out and say if you do have questions for either of our speakers, we are live right now on Modern Day Debate. So if you have questions, get them into our live chat. Super chats, like I said, will be read with priority.
Whew.
And it looks like EOG is back. We were
So
just
sorry about that.
Oh, no
I had
problem.
to
You're
eat
good.
We were
earlier,
just
really
You're
talking
bad.
good.
about my entire wall being Super Mario Bros for
Projectors. Yeah.
Super. Yeah, I was gonna say the Super Nintendo version. Beating that and just grilled cheese sandwiches. It's no
Wow,
biggie.
you guys are awesome. I'm so sorry. I was probably like dancing around in there, and you watch it back, I'm jumping everywhere.
No
You're
worries.
good.
You're fine.
Thank you so much.
We've got no problem. So we're gonna hang up the old broom here. So yeah, EOG. Potentially we have some more room to touch on a few other subjects
Sure.
before we go into Q&A. It's up to you. Well, you said sure, but I do want to kind of get a gauge. How much longer are you good before we jump into Q&A?
I'm good. Whenever you want. I gotta work in the morning, but I mean, I'm still good to go, man. We're good.
All right. Well, then we will. It'll be at your discretion. Then you just let me know when you're ready, and we'll just keep going.
Sure. Sounds good to me, man.
Sweet.
Let's continue, everyone.
So I wanted to ask you, EOG, did you want to continue that discussion about
I forget where we
vestigial?
were at. It's up to you, wherever you want to take it. Oh, vestigials, yeah. No, I'm good. It's up
Okay.
to you if you want to go back.
I just had another topic that I think might be interesting. I think you are a big fan of the argument of oh my God, I forget the name of that. What's it called? Tweaking so it's perfect. The argument that God made the world so good that
Oh,
it
I can't even think. It's like residual now. What is it? Fine tuning.
fine
Yeah.
tuning. Thank you. Awesome. Okay, so are you and you obviously agree fine tuning argument is a valid one.
I think so, yes.
Yeah.
I understand, before you go on, I understand that people say we don't have examples to match it to, but I don't think that discredits the idea that everything is laid out in such a way that everything's perfect for life. But I mean to cut you off. Go on.
Have you ever heard of the fallacy called the survivor's fallacy?
I'm not sure. Go for it. Maybe it'll make
Okay.
sense.
Because the survivor's fallacy, I think, is literally what the fine-tuning argument is, but it is a logical fallacy, and it is for a very good reason. So the survivor's fallacy was originally used in experimentation of rats, and they would do certain experiments on them with certain drugs, and they would establish, oh, these 100 rats survived this experiment. So it's a really good experiment, like 100 rats survived, right? Little did they tell people that 10,000 rats died during the experiment. So they focused on the survivors and disregarded the rats who died because that didn't support their initial argument, right? And that's what the fine-tuning argument is, right? Because so many people die and suffer and are in pain for their whole life, and we don't focus on those when we talk about fine-tuning argument, right? The fine-tuning argument is, oh, look at all the good sides. Look at all the people who survived. Look at all the people who are living good lives and the beauty of the world and the wonder. So this is a good thing. But you're completely ignoring all the ugliness and the people who don't live and die and the child cancers of the world and all of the aspects of the world that go against what your initial notion is trying to prove, which is the world was designed to be nice. But there's plenty of
So I
evidence
think
that goes the
maybe
contrary direction.
I didn't mean to cut you off, William, but maybe I'm wrong here. The fine-tuning argument, from my understanding, is in regards to the universe, right? All right, what you're
I
talking
don't know.
about is the idea that that was my understanding. Maybe I'm wrong, but what you're talking about is the idea that if God created everything and He is all good, why is there suffering? Is that kind of what you're touching on?
I mean, that's a whole other conversation I would love to have. But no, I'm talking about the fine-tuning agreement specifically, saying that, oh, everything was designed just right, just for us to be
Okay,
here in this perfect area. Like, it's so good because it's just for us.
okay.
But what that's ignoring is the fact that if it,
Suffering?
no,
Okay, sorry, I'll shut up. Go on.
it's okay. The logical disconnect is that if it wasn't perfect and set to be just for us, we would not have developed here in the first place. I mean, I guess you have to assume the evolutionary mindset already, but the evolution and that whole, genre establishes that life grew and developed here because of the position it was in. And if it was any other way, it wouldn't have grown here in the first place, which means that we would not have been there to complain about it if it wasn't perfect. So it's not that it's perfect because someone cared about us. We wouldn't have even been here in the first place if it wasn't that good. If we weren't in a Goldilocks zone of the solar system, right? We wouldn't have been here in the first place. So you're ignoring all of the possibilities that discredit the fine-tuning. We're so happy because it's perfectly the way it is. But if it wasn't perfectly the way it is, we wouldn't have even been here to complain. Does that make sense?
Sure, I see what you're saying, but with the fine tuning, the idea is that everything is in the perfect order to the, like, the millimeter, where if it were outside of that perfect order, and not just Earth and not just the sun, all the planets, everything's lining up to create this atmosphere and planet that can harbor existence, life, right? So the fact that the fine-tuning argument leads to that is a miracle in itself, in the sense that they say, well, we don't know, right? And there's no we don't, there's the Goldilocks zone, right? It could have been otherwise. And what you're saying is fair, that we wouldn't complain if it didn't happen because we wouldn't know, right?
Wouldn't have been
But
here at
that still
all.
doesn't take away from the fact that it happened. The miracle is that it happened, that everything lined up and all the planets lined up, and the sun was at the perfect distance, the Earth, then the atmosphere was orchestrated, right? And then the oxygen and everything on the planet and molten lava or whatever's in the Earth spinning,
There's
everything lines
many
up.
different factors. Many different factors and variables had to line up perfectly, right?
Billions
Many
of factors.
billions, let's say
Just
billions.
billions of factors.
But key word
Absolutely.
is it is a finite number of factors. So if you had an infinite number of again, this is going back to the monkeys on the typewriter. If you had an infinite amount of time and an infinite amount of combinations throughout that time, and all of them are covered, that finite number of factors will have been accounted for.
See, I don't know. You know, after this debate, I'm really struggling to comprehend what you're saying here in the sense just because I don't agree with what you're saying here. But I'm gonna go and check out some stuff on this and see if maybe, you know, there's something I'm missing here and I can understand
Yeah,
it.
it's
But I
monkeys on the
don't think
typewriter.
that you can give like an infinite amount of or infinity amount of time, not never ending, doing the same like molecules. I don't see why would we would expect to have the same people, the same conversations, nothing. I don't understand. I don't follow the logic there. I think that there's with infinite amount of possibilities and time, you're going to get completely different possibilities in time if things are random chance. If things are organized and orchestrated and predetermined, then yes, we would see repeats. But I just
You,
don't understand. I don't follow the logic there.
it's not that I will show up again. It's not that it's necessarily going to repeat. It will repeat, but it will only repeat because everything will happen, including repetitions and including every other possible iteration. It's like kind of like to try to have an analogy. It's kind of like the multiverse theory where every possible scenario is accounted in the multiverse, right? Every possible weird, Hitler was a good painter. He just painted the whole time. And we didn't ever get into 9/11 never happened or weird thing. Every possible scenario is accounted for if you consider infinite possibilities, right? So every possible thing, you might have similar possibilities. You're going to have possibilities that look nothing like the world, and I would never have existed. And all of those possibilities have been accounted for if you consider it to be an infinite amount of time, and all possibilities would be accounted for. Think of a screen, or think of like a white noise on the computer screen, but it's colors and white and black, and every possible pixel is changing every way. After an infinite number of iterations, every possible scenario of all of the pixels on the screen will have been gone over if you had an infinite amount of time. Do you would agree?
Oh yes, because the pixels on the screen are limited,
Let's
right?
go with
So
that.
but sorry, but I just want to jump because you said that it will happen. So I'm just curious, do we have something like, is there a test that you can do to see that this will happen after infinite amount of times, or are we just speculating that it must happen because there's an infinite amount of time?
Well, it's just being logically consistent. It has to have no, there's no test, but it just logically follows if everything could have happened, if you have an infinite amount of times, everything could have happened, will happen. Like there's nothing that would have been left out because you would have had an infinite amount of time for it to happen. So it will eventually happen. It might take 81 quadrillion pentifican years, but it will happen because you have an infinite amount of time.
But if the Earth were set today and it gave us another, or the universe were set and it gave us another 15 billion years, you think that things would likely be a lot different than it is today?
It depends. Do we have the exact same initial conditions? Is that what you're saying?
Sure.
If you have the exact same initial conditions, then it's more likely going to wind up the same.
Oh, likely, like logically, do you think if everything repeated on Earth except for the origins of life, that we would be sitting here again, or people like us, or humans would even look the same, or like uh we'd be
Accept the
related to
origins of life?
chimps rather than related to something else, or
But you
chimps wouldn't have
said, but you
dominated the
said,
Earth?
but you said accept the origins of life?
Yeah, like, so if everything, like the fine tuning, everything was put together for the perfect conditions for life, but that first cell never happened. I'm just referring to species, to organisms on
Right.
Earth. So
It,
if everything
yeah.
lined up in the fine tuning model, and all we had left was the origins of life to come to be, do you think it would all replay the same? Do you think life would even happen? Do you think these things would be necessarily the same or completely different?
If the initial conditions are the same, then I don't know why it would be any different. There's no reason to, unless you're going to put some monkey wrench inside of it, then it's going to be the same. Like we could go with the determinist route. But yeah, if it's all the same, then it's all the same.
So
If you
you
want
think
to,
if the conditions were all the same, that
then it's all
creatures
the
would
same.
evolve the same way, and we would have the same trees, and there would be, a whole bunch of different species of crabs that showed up. Everything would be the exact same way if the just based on the conditions being the same.
You have to give me a reason to think it would not be the same. Like, unless you're going to change anything about the
I
scenario,
can't
then
hear
why
you.
would it?
Oh,
Can you
I
not
can
hear
hear
me?
you. I can hear you now. I can
Oh,
hear you now.
Okay. I said you have to give me a reason to think it'll be different. Like if you're
Because,
telling
yeah,
me it's all the same, then it's all the same. But if you're
sure.
gonna say something changed, then I'll believe it. But
If you, excuse me, if you took a pool table or whatever, and you shot the ball at the pools or threw dice or whatever, just if you reset the whole table and then did it again, just because it's the same conditions and the same lighting and the same temperature, everything's the same. Why would you think that that table is going to repeat the actions, even if you did them the same way? You rolled it the same. Everything was the same.
why would it not be the same,
Because
Yoji?
logically we can do these tests. We can take a pool
No,
table
you
and set up the
can't.
exact. You can't. You
No,
can't
you
shoot
can't.
twice. So you can't take a.
No.
Hold on. You can't take a pool table in the
No.
same conditions, the same atmosphere, the same lighting, and
Mm-mm.
stay at the same angle and hit the balls with the same force. You don't think
No.
you can match all these attributes up?
There's a 0% chance you're gonna match everything up.
What if a machine did it?
It increases your likelihood, but it's still
Well, it's
unlikely
not
that you're gonna get.
increases. Like there's machines that build some pretty. If you ever worked at factories, these
I
things are
work
pretty
in a factory.
precise. Well, there you so you know these machines are very precise, man. So if you
They
set
are,
up all
and
these
yet they still
conditions,
fail.
they fail and they're repaired. But once they're failed, they go back to welding within millimeters, and they go back to
Yes,
punching holes and
but
making sure these things are safe. It's
yes,
all
so it
within.
increases the likelihood that it's gonna be doing a good job, and yet it will eventually fail again because you can't perfectly set it up.
Well,
You can,
that's
you
fine. Say
cannot.
you just build it and everything was fine. Okay, we're not going all the way to the deterioration. We're just talking about this scenario being repeated twice in the exact same conditions with the exact same force at the exact all these conditions being repeated. Do you think if everything was set up by machine and no human touched it and it was punched into a computer, it was all brand new equipment just checked and they repeated the same test several times, do you think that the likeliness that the exact same scenario on that table would repeat or those same dice would show up every time?
Um, it's just a matter of do you have every single variable accounted for? If you have every
Even if you
single
did
variable,
everything.
if you have everything accounted for, then the answer is yes. But
Really? So
in,
you think if everything's accounted for, then when you hit that table, everything's going to move the same, land where it was, everything's going to be the exact same
of
way.
course, like, of course, if you
So
have
if you roll
everything
the
accounted
dice,
for,
even if you rolled dice, if you put some dice in a bucket and the machine did the same amount of turns every time at the same speed and then turned it over, you think those dice are all going to land on 5 because
it's
they did the
not, I
first time.
think, there's no reason to think otherwise, right? There's no, you're not giving me any variable that's going to change it in any possible. If you're telling me it's identical, every atom is down to the exact same, then there's no reason for me to think it'll be any different.
Really? So you think that a dice, given the same condition, 5 dice in a bucket, rolled
It's not,
over
it's
and
not, I
repeated, is going to
think,
land on the same dice?
it's not, I think, it's 100% it would.
So
There's
why don't
not a
you?
question
This is
otherwise.
this is what you should do, bro. You should go home and you're home. You should practice rolling dice
A
the
human
exact same
can't,
way until you can get
you're
the
mixing,
perfect combination. Then go to a casino and win billions, man. You know what I mean?
you're confusing practicality with theoretical.
Well, I'm
You're
not talking
giving
about
me,
theoretical. I'm talking about logic, right? Logic says that if we roll dice over and over again, even under the same conditions, they're not going to show up twice. This is basic, you know what I mean? This is basic logic. Everybody knows that.
I feel
You
like
you
what I'm
turn
saying is basic logic.
you
Like
turn dice over, you're not going to get the same combination every
EOG,
time. It's very unlikely.
EOG, if every atom is exactly the same between this roll and the other roll, every atom is the same. Why would it be different? Tell me why.
Because it has to organize itself in such a way that it's the same. You can have all the same atoms, but who's putting together in the same way? How are they coming together to create what we understand as reality today? Why should they repeat? I don't
Because
follow that.
because the initial conditions are the same, identical. If every atom of the initial conditions are identical, then then it would be the same. Like
I think I disagree. I think there's potential for it to be the same, but I think the likeliness of it repeating itself, even given the same conditions, to repeat itself as we know it today is almost and even when you talk about evolution, right? There could be another planet out there like Earth that's in the exact same position, the exact everything matched up, fine tuning, and they wouldn't know the difference, right? It's that idea. It's all the same to Earth and everything, and it evolves evolutionists and all they know that it's not going to be the same life forms. Like this is the whole idea with aliens. they would have to have a similar atmosphere to us, if not identical to ours, to evolve. And there's no reason to think that humanity would spawn on another planet, given the same.
What do you mean there's no reason to think it would involve on another planet?
Because it's all random chances, man. What are the odds of all those
Yeah, so not
mutations
zero.
happening? Well, not zero doesn't mean that it's probable, right?
I
So,
didn't
what
say
are the
it's
chances?
probable.
Well, that's exactly what you're saying. You're saying that if infinite amount of time that it's going to happen again, just because the odds are not zero.
Oh my God, we're going all over the place. If you had infinite, then if you I like that you accepted the screen analogy with the white noise on the screen and the different colors. If you can go across every single pixel on the screen and they're all going at random, they're fluctuating all the time, you will have gone over every possible iteration of every pixel on the screen. You agree?
Yes, but it's programmed in the screen, right?
Doesn't
The way,
matter,
but
but it's
that way
not
that it's
relevant.
built, it has to hit that again.
It's
It
not
has no
relevant.
choice, right? It's designed that way. It has to hit again.
It's
The point.
designed to be random.
It's designed to be random, but
I'll
when
say
you're talking
that.
about the pixels on the TV, each one is accounted for, right? It's all there and it's designed. So if you have an
Yeah.
infinite amount of times, it's like that little thingy that goes around the screen and everybody screams when it hits the corner, right? This is designed to work this way. Even though it's random and shooting around the screen, eventually it's going to hit that corner, and that's why everybody waits for it. But it's designed this way. If you have complete randomness, even giving an infinite amount of time, there's no reason to think that something is going to repeat the exact same way that it did another time. I don't follow the logic there. And like I said, I'll look this up. Maybe there's something I'm missing here, but I just don't see the logic. I don't see
Yeah.
there's no experiment to prove it. It's a theoretical
Hey,
idea.
it's not.
And I see
It's
you're
not.
saying infinite amount of possibilities.
Yeah.
So therefore it should repeat. That's what I don't follow. Infinite amount of possibilities means infinite amount of alternate realities.
If you, I mean, yes, an infinite amount of alternate realities, but every okay. So, but you agree, if it was a screen, it would cover everything. Even if it was random, it would still cover over every possible image that could ever be shown on the screen because it's all the pixels are going randomly. And the infinite amount of time, I mean, everything is going to get covered.
Okay, wait. Sorry. Well, let's go back. I'm thinking you're talking like lights on a screen, but you're talking about
Yeah.
if you're talking about pictures though. Like you're saying that if a TV, is that what you're saying? If a
Pixels
TV went
make
off,
pictures.
I know, but I'm thinking you're talking about like pixels like light beams on like a snow show or something.
I
You're
am.
talking about, oh, you're talking about a snow show? Then yes.
Yeah.
Eventually it's
Okay.
gonna hit back. Yeah,
It's eventually it's going to show an image.
probably. Yeah. Infinite
Well,
amount
it's
of
not
time
probably,
of the
it
snow
has to.
show. Oh,
Yes.
eventually it's going to show an imp. Maybe. I suppose maybe you could see some sort of weird, like, what are those called? Ink blots or whatever, something.
Right. You eventually see that. But that's if you have like, some amount of time. But if it's an infinite, then you'll see every possible ink blot.
I don't know how that follows. And I'm really not trying to be difficult, bro.
It's
I'm
okay.
really like, I
I would
just don't
recommend,
follow this logic.
that's okay. I recommend after this, maybe look up infinite monkeys on the keyboard
Monkeys on the
typewriter.
keyboard. I will, man,
Yeah.
absolutely. Because
Yeah.
I don't know, like I said, maybe there's something I'm missing, but I just don't see the logic here.
Well, perhaps maybe not, but once you read it, maybe it'll make a little bit more sense where a atheist can have logical reasoning with abiogenesis, because it's kind of the same exact thing, is that if you have enough time, enough combinations of atoms, eventually one of those combinations is gonna look pretty good. And once it's made once, then natural selection will start. Once it's made something that can reproduce simply, then natural selection will immediately begin, and that process is going to lead to more advanced organisms, and it will drive advancement. It's no longer random anymore. It's now being driven by natural processes. And it's not just one day everything just showed up and a human just popped out of nothing. No, it's driven by natural selection. It's not random. The mutations are random, but the natural selection isn't. So if maybe it'll make more sense with the keyboard analogy. It's a famous thought experiment, but yeah, we just know that infinity means it'll happen. The question is, if you can admit it will happen in infinity, then you know it will happen with a finite amount of time as well. And that's what we have is 13 billion years of finite amount of time.
This might be
Yeah,
a
I'll look at them.
Yeah, this might be a good time for us to jump into the Q&A. It feels like we're naturally hitting a point here where it's up to you guys now to spur on some new thoughts and get us down some new territory. So if you're enjoying what you're hearing,
So,
hit the like button. We have, 296 votes in our poll right now. So if just 4 people vote, we'll have 300 votes in the poll of who is bringing the best arguments to the table. Right now we have 51% for William, we have 26% for evidence of God, and then 23% of you said, I don't like anyone or anything. All right, well, you're just miserable. And that sucks. All right. Let's hang out
Rough.
and see what's going on for our super chat. So Joe the Shade put in $3 there. So thank you for that. But I don't see a question attached to it. It looks like a hippo
oh,
making an inappropriate motion there. I'm not sure what he's doing, but we'll carry on. Dr. Dino says, Evidence of God. Would you like to discuss this with a paleontologist? I am open to talking about this, and I promise to be honest. Honestly, I think you were lied to. Anything to say to Dr. Dino?
yeah. I mean, I'll talk with anybody about anything. I mean, I believe my stance and I'm honest in my position. And I mean, I never say no to somebody that wants to debate. So
Would you debate
I don't know what
politics?
the see, because I'm dealing with religion, no, I'd rather not. I'd rather stay away from politics. Yeah.
Fair.
Just keep my personal politics out of it because to me, the religion is more. I would really love to debate the Bible. If someone out there wants to debate the Bible, that's really what I want to do.
Okay, awesome.
I love these debates, so they're fun.
All right. Well, I just closed the poll. It was just at 301, so that ended at 51, 26, and 22%. So I'll open up another poll so you guys can have some fun. Once again, hit the like button and let's carry in. He did follow up, or they did follow up. Dr. Dino said, on the honestly, I think you were lied to. They said not in this discussion, but by pastors.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
I honestly, I've never had a pastor before in my life. I've had pastor friends, but and we've had some great theological discussions. But every conclusion I've come to, I watch pastors online, but it's not about these details. I don't go to answers in Genesis. I think they're very biased. I appreciate what they're doing, but I think there's a lot of bias in it. And when I look at stuff, I want to look at it from an honest, open perspective. So the majority of people that I watch on these topics are either lecturers, professionals, or actually a lot of atheists. Like, you guys all know the famous atheists. I enjoy their content, except they always dog Christianity. They spend a good portion of their time just down kicking Christianity, and that sucks.
All right. Did you have any commentary there, William, or did you want to just push into the next question?
I mean, I would say, you're right. Usually atheists dog Christianity, but that's definitely because Christianity impacts most Americans' lives more than any other religion does. So that's why the focus is usually on Christianity. But yeah, I think at a certain point, no matter what, you still kind of learned these things from somebody, like whether it be
Jesus,
whether it be somebody written down. Well, okay, you learned it from the Bible, right?
yeah. I believe the Bible. Therefore, when I
Believe the
look, see,
Bible.
this is sorry, I'm gonna let. This is what's interesting is because I believe in the Bible and I look into these things based on the biblical perspective. That then I have people come over and say, "Oh, you're watching too much of this guy or this guy." But the actual reality is the Bible has led me and that guy to the same conclusion, and that speaks for itself, I think.
So the Bible, believing the Bible, someone said this to me once, and it kind of struck a nerve, and maybe it'll strike a nerve with you. Someone said, if you have faith in the Bible, most of the time you're going to say that means you have faith in God. But if you have faith in the Bible, what that I believe that means is you have faith in people. You have faith in humans.
Yeah,
Because humans, first of all, humans wrote the Bible. But not only did they write the Bible, they also rewrote the Bible. They translated the Bible into multiple different translations, into multiple different iterations, even within the same language, just to try to make it more accurate, whatever incentive they had behind that, because they didn't think it was accurate, whatever gave them that idea. And there's far more people involved with the writing, and they're not even all holy people. They're just regular people who translate things. Like weren't necessarily saints who translated, they're just regular people. And you believe people make mistakes. So how can you have absolute faith in this document if it's written by people who are not perfect? Like, not every single individual who translated it was a miracle worker. They were people who were translating for a job. And you have faith in them anyway, just because
Yeah, sure.
you have faith in those people.
Sure. So I believe in the Gospels. I believe that they are the historical narrative surrounding Jesus. And I argue most of these evidences from the Old Testament. And I have faith in Jesus. And Jesus trusted the Old Testament. Therefore, I trust Jesus's judgment, which is why I turn to the Old Testament. Yes, they were flawed. Jesus points to King David. Like he's the example of who he saw, and he was so flawed, right? But that's the point. It's
But
just because they're flawed doesn't mean God can't use them.
everything you know about Jesus was written down by a flawed person that wasn't Jesus, right?
Yeah, it
Everything.
doesn't matter.
So you trust those
picked
people.
by him. I trust the
It
people that
wasn't picked
Jesus
by
picked.
Jesus. The
Jesus
Bible's
picked 12
written.
disciples.
The Bible's written decades after Jesus was alive.
So they say.
We'll give-
So they say that it is, but that's not necessarily. See, I'm trying to get into a debate with this. I think James is setting it up. But I disagree, and I have reasons for it.
Awesome.
Sure.
Well, let's push into the next question, and you might have seen that I jumped out right quick, and I've been delivered a second sandwich, and it is
What?
it is upgraded. Look, like that is
Oh.
that is.
Did you already
grilled
eat your other
cheese?
sandwich?
It was fast and it was dirty, and oh, this one's actually peeling apart. It's nasty, guys. It's nasty.
You're the one ripping it apart.
I am ripping it apart. I'm just like, that is gonna be so nasty, man. I can't. It's like there's just like, I don't know how many pieces of cheese she put on that, but I'm not. This is gonna take a while to go through me. Anyways, IC Spin says androgynous or retroviruses are undeniable. Any thoughts?
Yeah. So
I think
I
that's true.
talked about this in the last debate. There's endogenous retroviruses that totally go against the narrative that's put forth. Let me see if I can find them here. But yeah, there's viruses that completely contradict what's been taught about what they are and what they do, as well as there's so many retroviruses that are productive, and we couldn't necessarily live without them. So yes, they say that endogenous retroviruses are some sort of proof for evolution, but I think the evidence definitely supports that it's more of speculation than they want to let on.
I would say I don't really know that much about androgynous retroviruses, but I would say even if I have no idea what those are, there's more than enough mountains of evidence to support evolution without that one point.
What can I ask you? Why do you believe them though? Because they're flawed men that write these things with motives. They have financial motives. They have funding motives.
That's true.
Some of them are atheists.
Oh, I can explain. So I think fundamentally, we could be. The thing is, the major difference is, I admit I could be wrong. Would you admit that?
See, I'm going to give you a quick answer, but there was actually one pastor I watched, I forget who it was, but he pointed this out. He said that Christians, and it's true, Christians were constantly struggling with our faith. We're constantly stopping and saying, is this real? Is this real? Atheists, on the other hand, you guys just know it's not real, right? You guys are content with that. You're not struggling. You know, atheists aren't. Do you struggle with it? Do you sit there and go, what if I'm wrong?
With the what?
With the idea that God is real? Do you sit there and struggle with it? Like, maybe I'm wrong.
God could be real.
Right. Yeah, but do you struggle with it? Is this something that you struggle with?
God could be real. If I was presented evidence for it, I would believe it.
See, so I'm the opposite. I think I've been presented with plenty of evidence, and therefore I believe in God. But sometimes,
why you struggle is because there's lots of evidence that contradict what you believe.
I disagree. I think that there's a lot more motives out there among the science community than there is among the gospel writers. These guys died for their cause. How many of these evolutionary writers of papers and whatever, how many are dying for their cause, right?
Have you ever
want to
heard
talk
of
about flawed men
Heaven's
with
Gate?
motives.
You ever heard of the Heaven's Gate?
Heaven's Gate, that was the Kool-Aid guy?
It was a different suicide cult. But they died for their belief too.
Sure. So you're taking it somewhere I'm not saying. I'm not saying that because people die for their belief that we should believe them.
Then why'd you bring it up?
because let me get there. I'm
Dang it,
saying
Ryan.
that if people die for their
Sorry.
beliefs, I'm a lot more likely to believe them than if they got financially motivated to do it, or they got, incentives or promotions or all these things that these people get when they make these evolution discoveries. And this has been going back on since the early 1900s. All these frauds have come out, and these people have been financially propped up, like hailed and called,
Just
finally the one that did it.
Just
And
one
there was
second,
motives.
just for the sake of our super chatter there. It says, "Dang it, Ryan, endogenous." See, I did still say it wrong. I still put the draw in there. See, I said it wrong,
What
and
did you? Can you say how you said
now
it?
they're under the impression that viruses are all about identity politics. Oh, I look at
Yeah, I
that.
was
I
gonna say,
see
isn't
Sven.
and I think he said androgynous, which means like gender neutral, which is pretty funny.
Really?
Oh
Yeah,
John.
man. Oh,
That's awesome.
androgynous retrovirus.
I have to watch
jeez.
that
All
back.
right. Well, let me just kick off my high heels here. I'm so sorry. All right, endogenous. Uh, go ahead with that in mind. That's what they said. So endogenous.
It's really gonna change the conversation.
Yeah. I think we
Um,
shifted.
I
I
know.
even
Where
said
were
this
we
in the
at?
live chat. This was gonna mess it
well,
up.
I,
Endogenous retroviruses are undeniable. They say.
I would just say, I'll just say about the whole, if someone dies for their thing, are you more likely to believe it? I would say, if someone dies for something, it's very likely they believe it, but just because they believe it, that doesn't mean it's good that you should be believing it either, too, right? You shouldn't join them because they believe it, right? Heaven's Gate, Jonestown, those were other suicide cults, and they believed it. They may believed it. I think Jonestown, there was a lot more sketchiness going on, but Heaven's Gate, they all willingly killed themselves, very willingly, and I definitely think they believed it. But the rest of us look at them and we're like, that's what cults do. That cults convince you so far. And to be honest, if someone's dying for something, then I think if anything, it could be a scam very easily because once you get passionate that hard about something, you very well are being blinded by something. Almost not. There's very rarely are things worth that much
Sure.
is to
Yeah, I
kill
don't
yourself.
believe I don't believe them because they died. What I'm saying is that their story, and there's lots of people that make up stories and believe things, and they do, sure, but their story. If you're going to look at people who you should believe, would you rather believe a guy that died for something they believed when they tell you? If you're talking about what they really believe, would you rather believe a guy that died for what he's saying or a guy that got financially propped up for what he's saying? Who would you rather side with if you were curious about a single topic? The guy that got rich or the guy that died to say what he had to say?
I think that's not nearly enough information for me to make a
Sure,
decision.
but I mean, who are you more likely? I'm not saying who are you going to side? Are you going to die next? That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying who are you more? If you are curious about a topic and you got two people that can educate you on this topic, and that's the extent, are you going to listen to the guy that is willing to die for what he's saying, or are you going to believe to the guy that's going to get rich by some other guy for saying what he's saying?
This
Who are
is
you more
such
likely to
this
listen
is
to?
such an absurd
Because you know
hypothetical.
the answer, man. You do. I'm not saying that you have to die with the guy and that you have to believe everything he says and that's that. I'm
I
saying
could
who are you
argue
more
him dying.
likely?
I can argue him dying for it makes it less likely to be believed. Because when you are dying for something, that means you are probably there's something going on up here that probably isn't secure, right? I think if you're dying for a belief, you have gone over the deep end, right? Unless everyone in the whole country is dying for it, you're unique in the way you're thinking, right? You're a very unique way of thinking. So you probably have something going on upstairs that isn't going on upstairs in most other people. I could argue you would be might want to less likely to believe someone who died for something.
So what about the people that were like during World War II that were getting, Jews out of the
Well,
country and they died for that
that's
cause?
why I modified my statement. I said if everyone is on board with the same line of thinking,
But there
that's
wasn't. It
different.
was a few. They were going against the science. They were called ridiculous. They were saying, you're science denier, conspiracy theorists. That is what these people were called, merely because they thought that these people should not be murdered or they're less evolved or whatever the issue was. And they were called all these things by society that we hear today. And I'm not comparing that.
Right.
That's not what I'm doing at
Right.
all. But
Oh,
I'm
you
saying that these same type of deceptions on larger degrees have been shown through history. That's all I'm saying.
well, I would definitely say you can definitely put what happened in World War II into perspective. That you see, you're adding all these different factors onto something. In World War II, there's lots of different reasons to believe that things they were giving their life for had a good reason. Because there's lots of other evidences. And when you literally boil down your data point to he died or he gained money, who are you going to believe? Then there's reasons that I would not want either one. But if you're saying, oh, what if it's a World War II? They died. It's like, well, I understand why they died. And I understand there was lots of factors going on that would motivate someone to die for what they were doing there. So you're comparing apples to oranges when you're making that.
So if you were back there in that time, say, and there was one guy that was standing there and he's like, I saw Jesus, I walked and lived with him, and I saw him rise from the dead. Hold on. And then that guy was being killed for what he was saying. And he was still saying, I believe in Jesus. I saw him rose from the dead, and he was killed. And there was a huge population, like you said, that was doing the same thing. But that guy was killed for that reason. And then there was a guy that was over to the side, and you're like, man, what happened? And he looks at some guy, the guy gives him $100 and he goes, yeah, he rose from the dead, man. Who are you more likely to believe?
So I like your further refining of this hypothetical. I want to provide you a hypothetical, but similar one, right?
Could you answer that first, just quickly? It's obvious. You're going to believe the guy that died, right? It doesn't mean you love Jesus. Okay, go on.
Sure. So the hypothetical I want to establish is how many eyewitnesses saw Jesus? 500?
They say 500.
All right, let's assume, let's be generous, 600, right? So let's say it was 600 people, right? And that's a lot of eyewitnesses. I want to ask you right here, right now, if you heard that there are 600 eyewitnesses of someone, all 600 people eyewitness someone rising from the dead in the Middle East, in a primitive area, an undeveloped nation in the Middle East that were very religious. If you heard 600 people eyewitness something, and this had nothing to do with Jesus, nothing to do with Christianity, it's completely different religion. If 600 people said they saw something like that, do you think you would be like, that's enough reason for me to believe this?
So if I saw, and I'm going to answer you directly, if I saw, or the 600 people, they were all dying and saying this happened, and they told me that, or sorry, they were dying for something they said that they saw in the Middle East. I heard what you said. So this is what happened. I am going to, whether I'm interested or not, I'm going to go, right? I'm going to think about it. It's not like I'm going to discredit it and go, you liars. I'm going to go, what's that all about? But even more than that, if I had a personal experience with this person that supposedly died, which I believe is a supernatural experience, and he left a book that I feel like is a supernatural book that I can track evidence in and feelings, and it makes sense to me, then yes, those people I'm much more likely to listen to. But I don't believe in Jesus because people said he died. To them? If I had those experiences, if I experienced the same thing that I've experienced with Jesus,
yeah.
If I didn't experience what I've experienced, then probably not. Why would I? But if I experienced what I experienced about that peasant or whatever you said that died there, if I had those experiences that the Bible or those people told me I would have, then yes, I would have to believe it.
Today, you would abandon Christianity and go to a different religion if you had those experiences, is what you're saying.
Well, no, I'm not saying that, but I'd have to be in the position, though, right? I'd have to be in the position to see what happened.
So you might.
I would say that I'm a Christian, and there's been too many things that I've experienced. I don't see why I would, but I'm saying that if I had these experiences that I've had and these supernatural experiences, and I read the supernatural book that explained this all to me, and I believe had evidence in it, and then there's a path. People don't just go, oh, well, these guys died. Yeah. That's just a topper on the cake. That has nothing to do with why I converted to Christianity.
But if all of those things were true for a different religion, you would stop being Christian and do this other
if religion. I had all the experiences hypothetically that I've experienced, then probably, I probably would.
Well, that's fair. At least you're being consistent.
All right, let's carry into the next question, and I will let DBK know in the chat. I am keeping track of your questions, or I should say your statements, but if you want to give me just like one question that you want to ask, or even just one super chat, or you don't even have to do a super chat, just put it in the live chat, because I am getting quite a stack here. So if you want to just give me a summary question, that would be great, because there's a lot of statements in what you're putting out there in the live chat. So once again, if you're hanging out in the live chat and you want a question asked with priority, it will be read through the super chat. So Joshua Jamie, thanks for coming out again, says, it's more likely God is a metaphor for the laws of the universe, or fit into the laws of the universe because it, I think the it meaning God, is a product of the universe without the need of an actual God to make them work.
Yeah, true. I mean, I suppose like there's nothing wrong with what he said. It's a hypothetical, and yeah, God could have been all made up by people, and it could just be a big lie. I'm not, but like I said, I've had personal experiences. Billions of people have had personal experiences. I have no reason to not trust the historicity of the Bible, as well as I believe a lot of it points to evidence that confirms it as a divine source, and like the people all that died for it, and like on and on. The experiences are what converts me and what keeps me a Christian and what brought me to Christianity. So yes, technically it could be all man-made and there could be no God and we could just be shape-shifting fish. I mean, but on the other side, maybe it's not. Maybe God created this. Maybe he gave us a divine book. Maybe he sent Jesus, right? So sure. Hope that helps.
All right. Let's see. Just loading back into the live chat. Just 1 second. Bear with me there, fellas. And thanks again to everybody who has put in a question. Cyroy says, pig blood can be used in transfusions for humans.
No, pig blood's been rejected. So a sheep's blood was successfully used in a transfusion in like the 1900s, but it was only a small amount. Pig's blood has been, as well as pig hearts, have been, and people died of anemia and other autoimmune diseases. Pig's blood cannot be transferred into humans. Perhaps if you got a little bit in, your blood's going to filter and clean it, but we're talking about like full transfusions, and you can't do it with pig's blood. They're working on altering sheep's blood right now so that they can use it, but we're talking natural. No, you can't do that.
Any thoughts over there, William?
I'm looking it up right now. It's called a xenotransformation, which is a cross-species transformation that uses pig blood cells as alternative to humans. The lifespan, pig have an average lifespan of 120 days, while human RBCs have an average lifespan of 186 days. So maybe you can, but you can only have it for a few certain amount of days. I don't really know.
Yeah, that's what I mean. If it's worked, like if we're talking, that's like that kid that survived. I think there was one kid and he got anemia, but then he went on to survive and he had a small amount of, I think it was sheep's blood put in him. So, I mean, as long as your body can filter it out and get rid of it relatively quickly. But if we're talking like we're hooking up full transfusions to, like if someone was bloodlet and they started pumping pig's blood in, it's not going to save them. Whereas if you have a human with the same blood type and they do that same process, there's a great possibility they're going to survive.
All right.
Well, it kind of looks like you're both right because you can do it, but it just won't last forever. Maybe. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. What am I talking?
Yeah, it doesn't work. Pig's blood. That's why they're trying to alternate. If you look it up, they're trying to alternate it right now or alter it right now, more with sheep's blood because it's closer. But they're trying to alter it right now so that they can use it. And pig hearts have been put in people and rejected, and they're working on changing these factors. But it's outside intervention.
All right, let's carry on. IC Spin asks another question. Thank you so much, IC Spin. Says, why did God make other lifeless planets in our solar system? I don't think I butchered it that time, so go ahead there, gents.
I don't know. Maybe they're productive. Maybe they're not. Maybe they're not what we think they are. I don't know. I've never seen these planets, so I don't know what's on them. I've never been there. I don't know what they're all about. I'd love to go one day. Hopefully, one day they'll open, space travel up to people, and then I'll answer that question and I'll say it is strange. There's a lot of empty places out there, but as of now, I just speculation.
We see my worldview is a much easier to answer questions like that, because it would make sense that planets exist that don't have humans on them. That's kind of like one of the main ways I would perceive the world through physics. It's a lot easier for me because not everything needs a quote unquote purpose that serves humanity, but you have a lot more hoops you got to jump through to try to logically justify all that stuff.
I don't have to require it. The stars are for signs, seasons, days, and years, and they do that, and they have done that since, as far as humanity can track. We've been able to use these things for very productive purposes throughout human history. So even if they're all empty out there and there's not a single one, God told us why He put them out there, and we've used them all through human history for the purpose He told us they were there for. So they're not useless, even if they're empty.
All right, let's see. IC Spin asks again. Thanks for another super chat. Says finding water on other planets refutes fine tuning. Any thoughts on that?
I don't see how that would. I just kind of explained it. I mean, I don't see how that would refute fine tuning, because another planet has water. If another planet has water, um, so
I
it
guess
has
he's trying
water
to say that that other planet is also fine-tuned,
to have water. But
which is
this
the
planet is
main
fine
thing you
tuned for the
need.
human species. That's what we believe as Christians. We don't think that it's fine tuned for a mosquito, right? We think everything collaborates here so that humanity can come here and have an experience. Not saying animals are any less important. I love animals. I don't ever want to see anything bad happen to animals, but I think that this planet is designed for humanity. And because God has put us in charge, we're here to take care of other creatures as well as the planet. It's our obligation.
All right. Next one coming in. If you have any questions in the live audience here, we are getting to the end of our list. So if you want to keep the conversation going and you have something that you'd like to unpack, or if you think something hasn't been answered, get it in quickly, because we are going to wrap up here soon if we don't get any more questions coming in. So the theater guy asks, the majority of the disciples of deaths as martyrs are just widely held church traditions and have not been established as historical facts.
I could say that about anybody. It's funny because every other figure in history that we have little writings about, everyone's like, oh, this is that, and it's all historical fact. If in like 5,000 years from now, people are saying, oh, Hitler was just a made up story, right? It's the same thing. It's pure speculation. There's so much documentation and corroborating works, like 50,000 different kinds of manuscripts that match up what we have written today, and it's relatively almost verbatim in many cases to what they had back then. There's no reason to say that. That's why most historians and scholars, atheists or not, they don't buy into the whole, Jesus wasn't real and it was made up. They all, because the way historically documents work, is enough evidence there to say, yes, I don't believe in Jesus. I don't believe he was God, but these people probably did. They probably died for him, and there probably was some poor guy that died on a cross saying he was God. They have no reason to deny it. That's how his historical documents work. So that you're the oddball if you think that Jesus and all the disciples were, and I don't mean that offensive. I mean in the big picture, if you think that that's the case.
Any thoughts over there, William, before we carry on?
I mean, if we're trying to fill the space, I could talk about that. I am of the perspective that every religion started as a cult. Every religion, and the distinguishing factor between a cult and a religion is that once a cult leader, because every cult has a leader, right? They always have a main guy at the head of the whole cult. And if in that cult, that head leader dies and the philosophies of the cult live on, it has now transitioned from a cult to a religion. And that's pretty much what we're seeing right now with Scientology, because L. Ron Hubbard died and we still have lots of Scientologists. And if it keeps going for a few more decades, it's going to be a solidified religion, because the head guy died. So I do believe Jesus probably existed as a person, because I have that perspective.
All right. Any other last comments there before we
Yeah,
carry
I
into
think
our last one?
that's a great answer. I think that's awesome. At least you accept that Jesus probably lived. But I see where you're going. I agree. Cults are made, and that's how you're right. It's a good one.
Icy Spin clarifies and says, Orion thy mod, especially if they don't know who Jesus is, the aliens that is. So,
Yeah,
just to follow
it's
up.
funny. I always I joke about that. Imagine that the aliens landed and they're like, "I want to tell you about Jesus." That'd be so funny.
I bet if the aliens landed, you're gonna want to tell them about Jesus.
What if they came to tell us? They had crosses on. Could you
That would
imagine?
be that would be pretty.
Would you believe that?
You ever watch? Oh my God, did you ever watch Raised by Wolves?
No, no.
It's
Is that with
basically
Kevin
that.
Bacon or
No,
oh,
it's
Dances
it's
with Wolves? That's never mind. Go
that
on.
sense. No, Raised by Wolves is a HBO show, and it's about they go to another planet, and they start realizing the religion of their old planet is connected to this new planet, and
Really?
it's kind of like what you're talking about. It's this big atheist versus religion movie show. So I think
Really?
you would probably enjoy it.
I'll
It's
check it out.
very
Raised with
fascinating.
Wolves
Raised by Wolves.
by
It's
Wolves.
about future. It's a futuristic sci-fi movie, but it's so good. And unfortunately,
Oh,
they discontinued the third season. I Want to Die. That's
oh,
all.
I'll check it out, man. For
Yeah,
sure.
please.
Hey, I mean, it's not as bad as like the hardcore Halo fans like myself,
Yeah, Halo
just
too.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that
they got
was
screwed.
oh
What does
yeah.
Halo have a show out? I missed that one. Did
No,
they put a
it
show
does
out?
not. It does just no.
Oh,
Actually, honestly, I will say there was one part at the
Had
last
two
episode
seasons.
of season 2 where they introduced the flood, and I was satisfied with some of the animation there. If
what show are we
aliens,
talking about?
oh, that was the
Oh,
Halo show, but it
The
was
Halo show.
overall
Okay.
very strange for
they had two
Okay.
seasons, right?
yeah. Yeah, it was
Yeah, but they canceled the third season.
yeah, they just announced
Mhm.
that, and hopefully somebody picks it up who's like an OG fan, because yeah, there's been some complaints. Icy Spin as the last super chat says, when can we expect Orion v James evolution debate? I don't know
Mm.
if we have too much to really debate on that one. Maybe I'll talk to him next time.
That would be
He's
phenomenal.
That would be the
Yeah, I
most
can't.
viewed
I know that is a
video
brilliant
ever made
idea.
on
Wow.
MDD.
oh,
That
I
would be
think
I
insane.
I think if I
the
would
whole world
host
would
James, that
gather.
would be fun. That would be great. But as for debate James, I don't know. He
That would
he's
be
got
Hey,
he's got a lot more experience than me.
unbelievable.
He's Dr. James. I'm just a doctor's assistant. I'll tell you. Just
I
Mm.
watched
I'm just a
Ryan.
lowly Igor over here.
I watched an interview. I think it was James a while back, and he said that he used to like to debate. Is there videos out there of James debating? I'd love to see them.
He used to. Yeah, I think on this channel that he did the odd debate here and there, and every
Is
once in
he
a
a
while he'd do like an
creationist?
He's a
after show.
Christian.
He would.
I know he's a
Everyone.
Christian, but is he a creationist?
I wouldn't want to speak for James, his positions, but
'Cause
yeah,
he never talks about that.
That's fair. Yeah, I know. It's
no, I was gonna
Yeah.
say, and
very interesting.
hopefully, as far as that goes, like me and James don't tend to disagree on a whole lot, so yeah, you could take that for what it's worth.
Tell
Um,
him there'd be a lot of views in that.
Yeah.
That makes
Oh,
we'll
sense.
try to find something
yeah.
we disagree about. How about that? That'd be interesting.
It
I'll
would
put
be
it on
fun.
every computer in the house here.
Get it live streaming on all the iPads in the Apple Store.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, yeah, make a big event out of it. Honestly, we would just end up probably having a nice conversation. Which, honestly, like I say, it's great when you have people that can get their thoughts across, and it's not just getting caught up in emotional baggage and stuff. And other times, the debates are really only coming down to the optics at the end of the day, because that's all we're really going to draw out of it is the personalities. So I do appreciate you guys having a very cordial discussion back and forth, and like I said, being able to unpack those thoughts. If you guys want to take a minute to let everybody know where you're at, other debates you might want to have on modern day debate, and overall your thoughts, closing thoughts on our discussion. If you
You
want
want
to
me to go
go
first, William,
first
or
there, William, that's well, actually, usually that's how it would go, but yeah, I do it in the
Oh, I'll
opposite
shut
way.
up
So
then.
go ahead.
You know what you're doing. Sorry, man.
Yeah, no, it's fine. Go ahead, evidence of God. I'll give you the last minute
Oh,
to
okay.
the closes.
I Yeah, sure. I just want to thank you, Ryan. Thank Modern Day Debates. Thanks, William. It was so much fun. I really appreciate it. I know we got off to a little bit of miscommunication there, but I think it turned out like a lot of fun and it was cool. And thanks for coming. I have a small YouTube channel that I got to start working on again. It's probably linked, and I would love to do some debates on religion, well, Christianity specifically. So if anyone out there knows a lot about the Bible or wants to challenge that idea. I think there's a debate coming up that James is setting up about evidence of the resurrection. I think really excited for that. So yeah, that's I'd love that. Thank you so much, guys.
Awesome. Well, glad to have you back. And yeah, William, you get up to a minute there. Give us your closing thoughts, wherever we can find you, and maybe some other stuff you'd like to debate on the channel.
This was super fun. This is my favorite thing to do, is talk about these deep conversations with you guys. I don't have a YouTube channel yet, but I think I might need to actually get it up and running, to get more of a presence, and so that I can get on this platform more often, because I love nothing more than doing this. And yeah, for any of you debate bros out there, hit me up. I'll debate anything, anyone, anytime, anywhere. Show me when, and I'm down.
All right, he's making the call. He even made the stank face at the end, right? He's coming at you. All right. Well, thank you guys for being here. Super appreciate it. I'm going to close it out. And yeah, once again, hit the like, share this out in the spaces you like having these discussions. Let our speakers go. And we will see you next time for more juicy discussions. See you next time.
Oh, thanks, guys.
What am I to do but tear away when I'm boiling at the top? Try to find a way to fight the fire, smart to rap from the minds of liars. You call the shots as you bow your heads, and the marching never stops. The stars could be free, but this insanity bends you right by the knee. Running in circles now for something that can't be found, and I bet that you hit the wall. The rain starts to fall. You can run away, sing a tune that's true. I'll be beside you. Who's the one that holds you down? Push through there in your way, anything to make you stay. Cut the strings before your life starts to decay. From tears of blood, regrets of laughter, turn around as your heart beat faster. Your hollow shape as the faith begins to drop. Shelter can find your thoughts of suicide. It's hanging down by the fray. Running in circles now for something that can't be found, and there's no time for today. You prayed away, the world would be untrue. I will rise against you. gone, nothing can matter at all. Insanity bends you right by the nail. Running in circles now for something that can't be found. Out of breath, smash the wall. The water consumed all. You prayed away that the world would be untrue as it rose against you. Did you think it would always be for free? Now sit back, watch it burn, burn,